Good morning, everyone, on this October 4th edition of the Random Thoughts Indoors live breaking news. Let's just get things started up here. Everything set up. All right, let's see. What do we got here? What do we got here? Let's see. Okay, an update. Patel's shock and testimony on Epstein files. Controversy. He might have killed Epstein. And Trump, it says here. So let's see. Let's listen in here.
Besieged by the evil Hillary Queentown, but saved in the end by Cash. Then Cash goes on to catch mules who are stealing the 2020 election for the great King Donald from Sleepy Joe. And then in the third book, Cash takes down the Dragon of the Jalapenos, nicknamed the DOJ. Your supporters had hoped that you would graduate from imagining yourself a romantic fairy tale knight to actually running America's premier federal law enforcement agency. Alas, just as we've learned how dangerous it is to put a science-denying anti-vaxxer in charge of our public health, we've learned how dangerous it is to name as director of the FBI a man who thinks of himself as a fairy tale knight who keeps a fire-breathing dragon named DOJ at home to forcibly drive villains out of the kingdom. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, while his killer was still on the loose, you decided you didn't need to be at FBI headquarters in Washington to work with your team while the chaotic manhunt unfolded. You spent your evening dining in a swanky Midtown Manhattan restaurant and tweeting out false information that the subject of the shooting was in custody, a statement you had to retract 1 hour later. Your performance was so disturbing that even the MAGA base was alarmed. Culture warrior Christopher Rufo, who just a few months ago sat in your chair as a Republican witness, observed that you performed terribly, and he called for your ouster. The FBI might be able to survive your delusions of grandeur and the explosively volatile temper that was on display yesterday in the Senate, but the intractable problem is that you are running the FBI not as a law enforcement agency charged with keeping the American people safe, but as a political enforcement agency working. It's impossible to overstate the destruction, chaos, and demoralization you've brought to the FBI and its workforce and the resulting danger your actions have caused to our country. You've been systematically purging the FBI of its most experienced and qualified agents, division leaders, and experts in counterterror, counterintelligence, and cybersecurity, precisely the people who have the expertise you lack and which the FBI and the country need. They've been expelled from the ranks of the Bureau simply because they did their duty investigating crimes, including those committed by the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and beat the hell out of more than 140 police officers, or simply because you suspected them of being insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. You illegally sacked Brian Driscoll, the former acting director of the Bureau and a decorated counterterrorism expert who worked at the FBI for nearly 20 years. According to Driscoll, you told him your own job, quote, depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, regardless of whether the agents chose to work on those cases or not. You added, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. You forced out the leader of the Salt Lake City field office, Mehtab Saeed, just weeks before Charlie Kirk's assassination, depriving the FBI of an experienced counterterrorism expert described by her colleagues as absolutely the best and legendary. She would have led the FBI's manhunt had she not been fired. When Trump decided that rounding up immigrants with no criminal records was more important than preventing crimes like human trafficking of women and girls, drug dealing, terrorism, and fraud, you ordered the 25 largest field offices to divert thousands of agents away from chasing down violent criminals, sex traffickers, fraudsters, and scammers to carry out this immigration crackdown. Director Patel, you treated the men and women at FBI with disrespect and paranoia. You've assembled a roving band of freelancing henchmen within your office and charged them with conducting unauthorized investigations, targeting and harassing career FBI employees. Amazingly, you forced senior leadership to repeatedly take polygraph tests to prove their political loyalty and pushed out leaders who refused these demeaning exercises. And now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI: the Epstein files. You want an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer, so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims, betraying all of the survivors of the sexual violence. Before you got in this job, you called for full release of the Epstein files, telling podcaster Benny Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. Upon your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned, and anyone from the prior or current Bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. This spring, you ordered hundreds of agents to pore over all the Epstein files, but not to look for more clues about the money network or the network of human traffickers. You pulled these agents from their regular counterterrorism or drug trafficking duties to work around the clock, some of them sleeping at their desks, to conduct a frantic search to make sure Donald Trump's name and image were flagged and redacted wherever they appeared, whether an email, a text, a letter, an interview, a photograph, or a video. In May, Attorney General Bondi reportedly told Trump that his name had indeed appeared multiple times throughout the Epstein files. And not long thereafter, in July, you and the Attorney General released a memo claiming that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability and transparency for the Epstein files to being a part of the conspiracy and cover-up? The answer is simple. You said it yourself: because of who's on that list. Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein over the years is well documented. A week ago, the Oversight Committee released Trump's disturbing birthday book, Note to Epstein, written over a drawing of a woman's naked body, referring to a, quote, wonderful secret. The Oversight Committee obtained the note from the Epstein estate, not from the FBI, raising questions again of whether the FBI has been withholding documents. While you're unleashing the FBI to cater to Trump's desire to shut down the Epstein inquiry, the first 9 months of the Trump presidency have seen a spate of political violence and domestic terror events. We saw deadly attacks on political figures on both the left and the right. The brutal assassination of Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the attempted murder of Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who miraculously survived a combined 17 gunshots. We saw an arsonist set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence on fire. And of course, last week, we saw the horrific, cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah that has shaken the nation. 1 minute after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, a 16-year-old shooter in Evergreen, Colorado, radicalized by white supremacist ideology online, opened fire and critically wounded 2 other students at Evergreen High School. We've seen lethal anti-Semitic violence, including the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staffers just blocks from the Capitol, and then in the attack on a gathering of Jewish people in support of hostages held in Gaza in Boulder in June. We've seen continued mass shootings at schools, like the domestic terror incident at a Catholic school in Minneapolis last month, which killed 2 children and wounded 18 others. And in August, a man fired more than 500 bullets at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, killing a police officer who was a Marine veteran and a father. People like Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk should be able to participate in politics as elected officials or active citizens without being shot down in cold blood in the United States of America. People should also be able to go to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to work, to the mall, and to church without being shot down in explosions of gun violence.
here, Brent,
The
don't forget
important
to
position of the
subscribe to the
FBI
channel, leave the
requires a
notifications on,
leader
because we
who
do go
puts
live
public safety
randomly.
and national security
No set
and the
schedule,
rule of law
guys, just,
first.
you know,
I'm
morning
afraid,
news.
Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe
We got
you've
updates
used the
there on
powers
the
of the
Epstein
FBI
files,
to
so-
serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI. And as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That opening statement may have been longer than any book director's ever written or anyone else has written. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Mr. Patel has been the director of the FBI since February of 2025. He previously served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense, deputy director of national intelligence with the National Security Council, and also as a congressional staffer, as a federal prosecutor, where he focused on national security cases. And he also worked as a public defender in the state of Florida. We welcome our witness, appreciate his work, and thank him for appearing here today. We begin by swearing you in, Director. Would you please stand? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. You can be seated as you are. You know, you've been through this.
VC, you know what I mean.
You've been through this yesterday. Did a fine job. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Director, you may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. I want to begin today by discussing the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigations, so a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated on September 10th. We immediately, the next day, released images early in the day in local time in Utah to start the public partnership in our manhunt for the assassin and culprits. At approximately 5 p.m. local time, I arrived on the ground and walked the crime scene myself. And we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist state and local law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspect on the grounds. We also released enhanced images. Due to that release that I directed and ordered, the suspect involved was apprehended and in custody at 10 p.m. local time. That's less than 2 hours after we did the video release and the photo release. So within 33 hours, that individual suspect was in custody. And his family, who has since been interrogated, specifically stated to FBI interrogators that because of the video that the FBI released at my direction and because of the photographs that they released, they identified their son, they confronted their son when he swung by their home, and that's what led to his apprehension. We are still, the FBI has that investigation ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing, and I want to thank the state of Utah and the state and local authorities there. And I also want to thank the Attorney General and President Trump for directing resources to allow us to conduct that investigation as we have. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals. 23,000 in 7 months. That's twice as many year-to-date last year. We've taken over 6,000 firearms off the streets. 6,000 guns are no longer in the hands of criminals in 7 months. We've identified and found and located 4,700 child victims. That is a 35% increase year-to-date last year. We have arrested 1,500 child predators. That is a 10% increase year-to-date last year in just 7 months. We've assisted our partners with countless counterterrorism operations around the world. We've captured, at the FBI, 4 of the most top 10 wanted fugitives in the world in 7 months. To put that in perspective, that's as many as my predecessor nabbed in the entirety of the Biden administration. We got 4, we got more coming. On top of that, in 2 weeks, thanks to the help of the CIA, we collected and captured one of the individuals responsible for the horrific Abbey Gate bombing that led to the murder of 13 service members. We did that in 2 weeks.
Awful.
They didn't do it in the 4 years of the entire prior administration. Nationwide, we've been executing our Operation Summer Heat, the FBI's national focus on targeting violent crime based on intelligence-driven operations. Ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, New Orleans.
Don't forget to like the video, guys.
To specifically highlight New Orleans and Nashville, there has been a 250% increase in violent crime arrests in those cities alone, and other mid-major cities that I've just listed. In just a few short months, we have already unleashed 1,000 FBI personnel across this country. Every single state across this country is getting a plus up. This is a fiction that the FBI is short or that we are compromising the men and women in the field. They do not need to be in Washington, D.C., so we're sending them into the field to each and every one of your states. Because of that, crime is at an all-time low. We had to do it because of the explosion of crime. And maybe the most important stat for Americans to realize: in just 7 months, we are on track to produce the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history by double digits. Those are results not of mine. Those are results of the men and women of the FBI. If you want to criticize me, bring it on. But do not attack the brave leaders in the field. We are also working 24/7, 365 on the opioid epidemic that is killing more than 100,000 people a year. We have seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets so far in 7 months. Year-to-date, 25% increase. To put that in perspective, that's enough to kill a third of the American population, 120 million Americans. 100,000 kilograms of cocaine and meth gone off the streets.
Yes, we know that.
Earlier this year, I highlighted in Cincinnati, Ohio, how we're getting creative to chase down those that were willing to do harm to our citizens. Not just by striking at the heart of the fentanyl producers, but the fentanyl precursor companies in China. And we indicted for the first time multiple companies and individuals, not just in America, but in mainland China, that are producing the ingredients that produce and make fentanyl that kill our children. And we're going to keep going. Counterterrorism work, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries are something the FBI must never sleep on, and we are not sleeping. In the counterintelligence space alone, this year, year-to-date, 30% increase in counterintelligence arrests from the DPRK, Russia, Iran, and China. And I want the American people to know, in this setting, there's a lot of work that the brave men and women of the FBI are doing we just can't get into, but they don't stop. Our cyber threats, ransomware attacks, those harming our children online. We have nearly a 20% increase in indictments and arrests in 7 months alone this year. We're going after those that harm our malware, infrastructure systems, telecom systems, and energy structure. Combating SALT and Vault Typhoons are just a little bit of the examples we're doing. Maybe most importantly, under the counterterrorism and domestic terrorism umbrella, are nihilist, violent extremists, and those that label themselves 764, who wish to go online and convince children to maim and mutilate themselves and commit suicide. And we are producing record numbers of arrests under that umbrella organization. We even stopped an individual in the 764 network who wanted to conspire to kill an adolescent girl. He is now in custody.
That's ugly.
Transparency remains one of my main priorities at the FBI. And this is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct. To put the 33,000 in perspective, my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total to the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in 7 years to this Congress and will continue to do so. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust and the mission and the integrity of the FBI, and we cannot do so without congressional oversight, and I promise you I will continue to do so. On the Epstein case.
Here we go, Epstein.
The original sin on the Epstein case was how it was handled by Mr. Acosta when he first brought the case in 2006, 7, and 8. The original case had a very limited search warrant, had a very limited search window, had a very limited investigative window. I was not there when those search warrants and that investigation was launched. I would not have done it that way. They were limited to only 3 to 4 years of investigations from 97 to approximately 2001 and 2002 to 2005. Mr. Acosta allowed Mr. Epstein to enter into a plea agreement where he served weekend jails for trafficking minor women. He also was allowed to relieve jail to go home on the weekends. Plus, he allowed a non-prosecution agreement to be signed as part of that plea deal, prohibiting future investigations from that prosecution and from that evidence, and prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift those prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times.
Let's go, you guys.
Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight.
160 watts.
And I'd lastly like to focus on Operation that the President led in D.C.
Let the people know
Because of this, we are taking this fight in D.C. to every single city across the country. 2,100 arrests in the last month alone. D.C. has seen a 60% decrease in gun crimes, 75% decrease in carjackings, and 53% decrease in homicides in our nation's capital. And rightly so. We're bringing that fight to the streets of America. I want to thank you for your support, and I'm proud to be the director that leads this FBI into a new headquarters building that they've needed for decades, saving the taxpayer $3.5 billion, and also providing our workforce a safe environment. If you don't know the calamity that is the Hoover Building, I invite each and every one of you to walk around. I'll give you a tour myself, and you can see where the cement falls on the heads of our employees that is only to be saved by netting, just to give you an example. Thank you for support to our mission. And I do want to highlight one thing about D.C. It's because the FBI gathered sources and evidence that we were able to, through our source network, identify the horrific murder of the D.C. intern, Eric Tarpinian. And I've spoken to his family, and you know, we are working to bring them justice. And Mr. Chairman, in my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service, if anyone has any questions about my service, bring it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Eisen.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of fresh air. As you outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor, roughly. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so how much of that has to do with taking people out of the backside of the FBI and moving them into the field, into doing the job for which we primarily pay the FBI?
It's exactly what we needed done. 1/3 of the FBI's workforce resided in the National Capital Region before I got there. 1/3 of the crimes do not happen in Washington, D.C.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So 1,000 personnel of the FBI were deployed across this country on a permanent basis, and every single state in this union is getting a plus up, not a reduction, a plus up of 1811s of intel analysts and support staff. And that is why the crime rates are going down in record numbers.
Well, thank you for doing that, and you know, it's perhaps the hardest thing for a bureaucrat to do is to lower the head count around them that support them, and I appreciate your willingness to do it different than your predecessor. A lot of what you covered earlier was the find, the discovery, and then the prosecution that is done by the DOJ. But I want to talk a little bit about the prevent side.
On the Charlie assassination, sir?
No, on all of these. Okay, for example, and I'll bring it up before the Democrats bring it up, January 6th. January 6th, we now know, because of your find, that in fact there were people involved who were not just observers, but participants who, in fact, it's been alleged, and I personally believe, in fact, were part of promoting, perhaps even the one woman who died, encouraging her to walk through a door that led to her death.
Welcome in.
When you see that kind of activity, and you know it was done under predecessors with full knowledge, whether it's January 6th, where embedded people crossed the line, or any other activity, including obviously the Russian hoax that we're now dealing with up in, front and center. My question to you is, what can you or others do to prevent it from occurring again? Not on your watch, but on future watches. How can we know that this won't happen again the moment you leave the FBI?
It's simple. What I'm doing through our leadership cadre is having FBI agents do what they were trained to do, not what they were not trained to do, not put them in situations that both harm them and the public. We're also utilizing our SORT networks and prioritizing the threat structure to go after the narco traffickers, the counterterrorism people, the counterintelligence threats, and the cyber threats. That's what they were trained to do, and that's what we're letting them do.
One major question I have, after decades of doing this, on our side of it, both the chairman, myself, and others, both at oversight and here, have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice hide behind non-statutory practices. Now, you've changed the interpretation of many of those practices. That's why we're getting the discovery that was previously withheld. How do we work together to make sure that we never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has a prohibition about giving, quote, you fill in the blank, that has led to the chairman not seeing anything until you took over?
I'm wedded to aggressive constitutional oversight. Having been a House congressional staffer, I know that is an important part of securing our democracy. And the way we make it an everlasting, enduring process is by showing the American people the results of what we are doing, the important work of this committee, and putting it out to them so they can see government waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they can demand from our constituents and our electors that they want this process to continue.
Last major question here. Some things are so sensitive that we both would agree they cannot be made public. Will you commit to this committee, when it is too sensitive to disclose, that you would at least make it available for in-camera review by the chairman and ranking members or others designated?
I have done that, and I will continue to do that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a breath of fresh air. This is the beginning of what we need. But my questions today for the director are ones in which I believe that we do need to codify by agreement or by statute, if necessary, the kind of openness and transparency that we're seeing from this administration, the kind of discovery that's allowing us to do our oversight properly. And I would hope that that be the follow-up to this, obviously along with the Attorney General. And I yield back my 4 seconds.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible, close quote. I would note for the record that Donald Trump has famously demonized practically every person he has ever disagreed with. And therefore, using his own logic, he has put their lives at risk.
Hey guys, we're going to come back to this in
know,
2 seconds here.
About 2 weeks ago, when I announced my decision not to go, when I announced my decision not to seek re-election, many people on both sides of the aisle, including the chairman, offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took the Truth Social to call me a, quote, psychopathic nut job, among other things. Yesterday, I received a threatening note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimic some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day. We have seen political assaults on both the left and the right.
Yeah, let's listen to this for 1 sec here.
So the story that we are getting information on right now is potentially a big one. Hamas has reportedly agreed, and we really want to make sure that that this is where they are right now, because we know that Hamas has gone back and forth on this 20-point deal and whether or not they would agree to it all. But there is indications that they are offering to release the remaining hostages, dead and alive, and this is coming from Reuters.
Listen to this, guys.
Now, President Trump gave the group until Sunday evening to accept his Gaza peace plan.
Oh, he gave them until Sunday.
We don't know if they have agreed to all of these elements, though. So we need to just sort of tread carefully.
So they're agreeing to release hostages?
To see exactly what they have agreed to. Let's bring in Fox News contributor and National Review Institute fellow Douglas Murray, who joins us by phone. Douglas, good to have you with us.
This is awful, guys.
As I said, we're just getting the early indications on this.
This is like I say every morning. Every day I come on here, there's crazy stuff going on.
My first thoughts are that it needs to be treated with considerable
Why we're doing
caution.
this, guys. Educate.
They have 2 more days,
Knowledge
of course,
is power.
and they are world experts at dragging things out. It seems
world
from
experts
what the reports that have come through so far, they've said that they're willing to negotiate about these matters, but it is certainly a cause for optimism that the release of all of the remaining hostages is first and foremost among the things mentioned. There are 2 main issues that the Israeli government has said they wanted from the start of this war. They wanted the return of all hostages and for Hamas to cease running the Gaza. If Hamas are indeed open to both of those things, there will be lots of negotiations still to come, but this could well mean the end of the war.
Well, I hope so.
All right. Douglas, I just want to bring you into what we're learning now, and that is exactly what I mentioned and exactly what Douglas is mentioning, which is that Hamas is trying to negotiate this deal, right? They have until Sunday night. The latest that we're seeing is that they have agreed to some parts of it, but not other parts of this agreement. And let's put back up on the screen the 20 points to this agreement.
Ryan says, I blame Britain.
Obviously there are issues that they're going to have with some of this. And, you know, Douglas, this outline of this plan calls for them to basically
welcome in, Brian.
Give up all their weapons and leave leadership in Gaza. Do you think that they will agree to that?
If you're just new here, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more breaking news every morning.
But there are reassurances in the Trump peace plan that there could be, for instance, an amnesty for Hamas terrorists who put down their arms and wish to leave. Obviously, there'll be a lot of issues within that, issues of trust from Hamas's side about that. But the peace plan is a very comprehensive plan that all sides, apart from Hamas, have accepted. And I think that they must, at the moment, be feeling the pressure, not least of their Arab allies, who have already signed on to this plan, saying to them, you know, you are the only thing now keeping the war going. Hamas is the only entity that is keeping the war going. If everybody else in the region, including Israel, has agreed to these plans, why are Hamas still refusing to do so? And the pressure on them in the region, and indeed from their backers, I think at this moment will be considerable. But it's certainly a cause for some optimism that they seem to realize that this time the deadline of Sunday is a real deadline.
Well, they have seen how President Trump deals with these real deadlines in the past, certainly in Iran. After giving them 60 to 90 days to end their nuclear weapons program, that opportunity was not taken, and we saw what happened with the B-2 bombers in Iran. And I think Hamas has gotten the message, but whether or not, you know, this, as we have all said, caution is the word to keep in mind here as we look at these early reports from Reuters that Hamas has accepted some of the elements of this plan.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to
All right, guys, let's go back over and listen to
the attack on Charlie Kirk,
the Epstein files,
the attempted assassination of the president, the murder of the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House, the assault on Paul Pelosi, and the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for example. Director Patel, do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right?
There is too much political violence.
Do you agree, yes or no, that there's violence?
There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side.
From either side, okay. Are you aware of the study by the Cato Institute, a well-known conservative group, that found that 69% of the violence is from the right?
I'm not familiar with that study.
You're not familiar, okay. I would commend it to you. Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
You don't know.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Yeah,
are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Nobody at the FBI is doing that.
I didn't ask you about the FBI, I said the administration.
I speak for the FBI.
I would like to enter the record an article from today's New York Times titled, Trump Invokes Kirk's Killing and Justifying Measures to Silence Opponents. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, President Trump and his allies have laid out a broad plan to target liberal groups, monitor speech, revoke visas, and designate certain groups as domestic terrorists. I ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record. Thank you.
Well, you didn't know much about
Politicizing
any
the
of
murder
that,
of Charlie King to go after free speech is not a legacy I believe Charlie King would have wanted. Moving on, I want to address another topic. The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for his post-presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI may be abandoning its commitment to investigating public corruption. Since its creation in the wake of the Watergate scandal, the Public Integrity Section has been one of the crown jewels of the Department of Justice, investigating and prosecuting corruption among the nation's public officials and acting as a key safeguard against politicized prosecutions. This section's work has been supported by an elite squad in the FBI devoted specifically to rooting out corruption. But according to reports, the public integrity section has now been decimated, and the FBI's public corruption squad has been disbanded. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad. I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, Senator Warren and I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing grave concern over your decision to effectively legalize corruption and politicize prosecutorial decisions. And he asks unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond as soon as I can.
You will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate the change in the FBI and the tone since you've been there. We heard the ranking member, however, describe the FBI under your leadership as being resorting to political enforcement and you personally as being paranoid. I would just suggest that perhaps that is the projections of the ranking member himself and not you, sir. I want to refer to something that was said yesterday in yesterday's hearing by Senator Grassley. He said, it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics. At your nomination hearing, he gave you records, made public records about whistleblowers regarding something called Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by anti-Trump FBI agent Thibault, and Arctic Frost became Jack Smith's elector case. The new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. In fact, it was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the groups that the Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorneys General Association, and Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups, Republican-linked individuals, were placed under the investigative scope of.
What do you guys think about all this? This is pretty crazy stuff, right?
Arctic Frost. On that political list for investigation was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. I'd ask that, Mr. Chairman, that document be administered.
Without objection.
So, I know that this may be under current investigation, but I wish to ask specific questions about this for just a moment. What search tools were used in Arctic Frost to view private communications of targets?
I believe the traditional search tools, search warrants, lawful service of process, and the
249 in
tools that the FBI has in our infrastructure systems, cybersecurity systems, and counterintelligence systems. But generally speaking, if I may, I want to use this to highlight the fact that I'm continuing my promise to work with Congress to produce documents simultaneously and also conduct ongoing investigations. I'm giving you as much as I can, and I'll give you more when I can.
Thank you. Another question regarding that is, were there any directives from the Biden White House concerning the Arctic Frost investigation?
Were there any,
directives or communications from the Biden White House itself concerning the Arctic Frost investigation?
I'll just rely on what was turned over to date, sir.
Okay. So I want to add here, the search warrants that were used included the seizing of a U.S. member of Congress, his phone. I think we all know who that was and how that was taken away and used for political purposes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director. So we'll leave that for a second, and let's go over to
helps keep us on here.
The Charlie Kirk case for just a second. Let's emphasize this. How many hours did it take from the assassination to the arrest of the assassin, Mr. Director?
33.
That seems pretty swift, and it was because of the actual release of videos and photographs that you directed to be released, sir.
That's correct, and to put it in perspective, the Boston bomber took 5 days and Luigi Mangione took 5 days.
Was the platform Discord forthright from the start with law enforcement about the shooter's communications on its platform?
Discord, the platform ownership, has been working with our lawful process, and we are obtaining materials from them on a rolling basis.
Thank you. And I want to get back here to Arctic Frost for just a second, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the unclassified document from the FBI released to be admitted to the record, and a document from the Economic Times also to be admitted to the record.
Objection.
So I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. We could go on about the Epstein case. I've got a bunch about that, but I'm just going to let you, if you wish to respond to either of the two vitriolic questioning or statement from the Democrats.
The work of the FBI speaks for itself. It's on showcase here today. Anyone that wants to attack the FBI can attack me, but leave our leadership structure alone. When you have 23,000 violent felons arrested, twice as many as this time last year, the work speaks for itself.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Appreciate your good work, Director Patel. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, before you joined the FBI, you railed against it for covering up Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking ring. Let me refresh your memory with this clip.
Yeah, he did.
Has Epstein's list.
Yeah, look,
they're sitting on it.
Release the
that
files.
doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
So you finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the FBI and harsh words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big boy pants.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
This is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black book?
Black book.
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the black book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
The Rolodex, which is what everybody colloquially refers to as the Black Book, has been released.
Oh, no, you're talking about what the journalist got 5 years ago? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you were talking about there,
That's
the Black
exactly
Book
what I
under
was
the
talking
direct control of the FBI director.
We have released more material than anyone else before. The Biden administration, Obama administration had the exact opportunities to release this material, and they never did. And if you are telling the men and women of the FBI,
Why
we're
have you
not going after
changed your
child predators.
position?
Hang on, you said we're not going after child predators. 1,500 child predators arrested this year, 35% increase,
I'll reclaim my time.
4,700 child victims
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
found.
reclaim my time if you could instruct the witness. Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI director and all of it should be released. Why have you changed your
Everything
position?
that has been lawfully permitted to be released has been released. And as I told you,
Really?
the investigation was limited. And let me make something crystal clear. I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic other people, other women, and they're not other victims. This is the investigation we were given from 2006, 7, and 8, and the search warrants from 2006, 7, and 8. That's what we're working with.
Well, wait, have you released all of the stuff that the FBI has seized from Epstein's house? The computers, the emails, the file cabinets, the documents? What about the financial records? Have you released all of that?
Everything the court has allowed us to
Which
release.
court are you talking about?
3 separate federal courts have come in and said...
We're talking about the evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any idea how the law works? Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No, I want you to follow your own word, Director Patel. You said up there it was under the direct control of the FBI director. He had the black book.
Everything I have direct control over, we have gone to court. You haven't.
Complete your sentence. Everything you have direct control over, you said.
have gone to court and everything we have direct control over.
Complete your sentence. You said everything.
Release. We're releasing.
He'd like to complete his answer.
We're all screwed. Look at Canada.
You began the sentence. Everything you have direct control over, and then you stopped that sentence. You've released everything that you have direct control over.
I have direct control over and can lawfully release. If you're not familiar with the court orders, that's not my fault.
Oh, I'm
Don't
perfectly.
look at them.
I'm perfectly familiar
court.
with them. But how did we prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell?
She was prosecuted with the investigatory material that was collected from 2001 and 2005 because of the non-prosecution agreements and the court orders on the investigations and search warrants. We were not able to develop new information. And oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein was out for 12 years, and the Obama and Biden administration did nothing to look at his work, his pedophile network. If you want to blame me, that's fine. But now you're blaming the men and women who conducted this
stop
great
that.
search.
I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials under your direct control.
Has anyone released more information on Epstein than I have? Has anyone?
Much more.
Did Comey? Did Ray?
Much more.
Did they?
Excuse me. Much more has come out in the days since the American people and Congress have been demanding it. But it's coming out in dribs and drabs. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to satisfy your curiosity. You didn't join us when we filed court to release the court orders. You could have. You have lawyers. You could have shown up. You didn't do that.
That's a tiny fraction of the material we're talking about.
That is not.
It is a tiny fraction.
How do you know that? Have you seen everything?
It's all misdirection.
How do you know
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Director. Just to be clear, how many of the Epstein files were released in the 4 years of the Biden administration?
0.
And how many have you released?
I don't have the number, but it's got to be thousands of pages of stuff.
I was going to ask you to begin whether Americans are safer today than they were 9 months ago, but you cited dramatic increases in criminal arrests since you've taken office, a dramatic decrease in crime that's resulted. Who would have thought that taking criminals off the streets would reduce the crime rate? But somehow we have stumbled upon that new truth. But it begs the question, what was the FBI doing during the 4 years of the Biden administration to see that dramatic an increase in work under your tenure?
Simple answer is I'm letting good cops be cops. We're working with our state and local law enforcement. We're energizing our partnerships. We're bringing on more task force officers. When you have more cops in the streets, when you're using ground-based intelligence, when you're not weaponizing law enforcement and focusing on D.C. and focusing on the rest of America, this is what happens. It is not a significant mind shift in terms of how we maneuver the FBI. They've wanted to do this work since they signed up. We're just letting them.
And we've seen many prominent Democrats oppose your efforts to restore law and order to the streets of our nation's capital. I mean, all of us here have seen a dramatic change for the better here in Washington, D.C. Why are so many Democrats attacking you for that?
Sir, Democrats have been attacking me for a decade, as is the fake news media. They didn't like the fact that I exposed the Russiagate host and the largest weaponization of the FBI, DOJ, and U.S. history. We proved it to be true with congressional oversight. I'm wed to that congressional oversight and will continue to do that work.
Christopher Wray repeatedly warned this committee that the Biden open borders policy had produced a significant increase in terrorist threats that he said kept him up at night. A particular concern, he said, was the 2 million gotaways that entered the country during the Biden administration. That's an average of 41,000 every month. What are the monthly gotaway numbers today?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you on the exact gotaway numbers, but
he's got
identifying that there are gotaways is step 1. Going and manhunting them is step 2, and that's what we're committing our resources to do.
Well, that's my next question, is what progress has the administration made in apprehending and removing terrorist threats that came in during the Biden years?
I think you're talking about, if you're not, let me know, known or suspected terrorists, and we've encountered almost 0 at the southern border since the southern border has been sealed. But the problem that we are running into is our northern border. It's largely expansive. The enemy has adapted, and we need more focus on the northern border to stop known or suspected terrorists from coming in from places like China, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, Afghanistan.
And what can you tell us about the remaining threat posed by potential terrorist cells here in the United States?
The terrorist threat that continues to be posed by international terrorists here in the United States is one of my highest priorities. We are working through our intelligence community partners to identify those individuals, and we've taken down numerous individuals and numerous rings across this country to neutralize that terrorist threat, including places like New York City, Los Angeles, and I believe Dallas, Texas, most recently.
How extensively did criminal cartels like Sinaloa, Jalisco, New Generation, MS-13, Trinidad, and others infiltrate our country during the Biden administration?
By the tens of thousands.
Tens of
And
thousands.
what progress have you been making in combating their presence?
Don't
I
forget
think
to double
the
tap that
DHS is
screen,
best to
guys.
speak
Like
to
the
that, but I
video,
think
subscribe
I
to
can't
more-
remember the
more
numbers of
breaking
tens of
news
thousands
every
or hundreds of
morning.
thousands
Like
of
the video,
individuals they found
subscribe,
that
please.
came in
Help support
illegally,
me.
and the tens of thousands that associations to criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats on fighting violent crime like we're doing.
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic frost. What else can you tell us about that and what we need to do to assure that it never happens again?
Continue the congressional oversight work that you're doing on Arctic frost. Let me provide you with more documentation on Arctic frost, and also call in witnesses from the paperwork that we have given you. You have that right, and the American public deserves to hear what those people have to say. As for my ongoing investigation, there's not much I can say.
What role did the FBI play in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2024 election?
Off the top of my memory, sir, I believe the FBI was in possession of verified information from that laptop, and it was improperly publicized that they did not have information and masked it as Russian disinformation. We now know that was categorically false. I don't know why the FBI did that, when they did that, but we've released all the materials related to that.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Mr. Goldman.
203 people
Mr.
in there.
Patel,
24 likes.
does
Let's
Donald
go,
Trump
guys.
appear
Everybody double
anywhere
tap
in
the
the
screen,
Epstein
give a like
files?
onto the video. If you're watching onto your computer, just go back onto the
I'm sorry,
chat
could you say
and
that again?
Like the video.
Not a complicated question. Does
way more
Donald Trump
than you
appear
guys know.
anywhere in
Gets
the
us out
Epstein
there, too, with
files?
the
I didn't say it was a
algorithm.
complicated
You gotta let
question, I
people
just
know
didn't hear you, so my
information,
apologies.
Education.
We have released
Documentation.
where
That's
where
what we're
President
doing
Trump's
here, guys,
name's
every
in the
morning.
Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
You hear me better now?
What other evidence does do those three
Microphone
court
checker
orders
1,
you
2.
cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, just let me know in the comments, right? Because I'm only new at this, you guys. I'm only new to doing this stuff live streaming as well.
We
So
can argue about it all
let me
you
know if
want.
the audio's
You
down. It's
agree
just
that
in
there
the
are-
software
so
that I'm
your
using. I got to
testimony
turn
here
mic
is that
up
the
or
reason
whatever,
why
right? So just let me know.
you
Thank you,
are
guys.
not
Appreciate it.
releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, all of the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring
Ronald,
them
welcome
to be
in, welcome in.
sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time.
Yeah, there was like a bunch of SD cards or something
overwhelming
found
majority
in
of
safe.
that
A
video
bunch of
is
cash and weapons and stuff.
pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and
That's what
child
they're
sexual
saying. There's
abuse
like
material.
so much
We will
stuff. It's
never
like
release
blackmail
that.
on people.
Well,
or
as you
something
should
like
not
that,
release the victims, but if there are
But
videos
at this
that
point-
relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew.
Let's
or
go, you guys.
photographs
240 in here right now. 26
that
likes. Double tap
you
that
have total
screen.
control
Like the
to
video.
release.
Yes, and if it exists,
It
So
helps
why
get us
haven't
out there
you
with the
released it?
algorithm, guys.
why are you supposing
Let this
that
information
that
be
is a fact
seen
when
by
in
everybody.
fact
You know
it
what I
is
mean?
false?
Educate the people.
Are you saying that
You're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we have collected pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years.
10
and
years,
every single
guys.
video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally
That's
brought.
crazy to
I'm
think
not
it's
asking
been going
about
on this
prosecutions.
long.
I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were
Holy.
involved
By
in
this
the sex
time, the
ring
files will be really
that you
tampered with.
promised to do before you became FBI director?
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm not
children on
asking
the
about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me. Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in the Jeffrey Epstein sex ring.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our possession.
And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's talk about the witness
To
interviews.
my knowledge, no.
302s of witness interviews.
I
Those
don't
are
know.
not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional
Winston,
sealed
welcome
order
in,
for
Winston.
a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names
If
of
you're
the
just new here, don't
victims?
forget to like the video
We're
and subscribe to the
releasing
channel.
as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to
How is
the courts.
how is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders
Actually,
work? Do you know how
Mr.
sealing
Patel,
orders
I was a real prosecutor for 10 years.
A
I know
real
exactly
prosecutor.
how.
So I was a
court
fake one?
orders. And I want to understand what the court order prevents you from
Mikes and
releasing
Lindsay's,
witness
welcome in.
statements that the FBI took.
You should know that as
Bonnie,
a real
welcome in.
prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the
You guys are
material
just new
is
here, don't
sealed
forget to
unless that
subscribe to
judge
the
testimony
channel.
believes
here
it.
Like
is
the
that
video, it helps us out a lot.
All of those witness statements are
Bringing you
under
guys live breaking
a
news
court order,
every day
a
that I can.
protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
No, that's not my
Congress has
question.
sent us a
My
subpoena.
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order are no longer under a protective
feeling by
order,
the time Cash
why
got
are
there,
they
all the
not being
information was
released?
already
How are they
deleted.
not
Yeah,
under
redacted.
why are you not
Yeah.
going to the court like you
Roman
did for the
numeral
grand jury
three.
testimony
Ooh,
to
well, I don't
unseal
know.
those
The
records?
DOJ did go to the court.
No,
No,
not
but
on
then
those
I saw it
records.
for
Why
the
aren't you going? You
afternoon.
just went on grand jury.
Got
Time of the
annoyed,
gentleman is
and,
expired.
You are hiding the
Listen,
Epstein files,
Time
Mr.
of the
Patel.
gentleman is expired.
You are part of the cover-up.
Can I respond?
Sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking and sexual crimes is patently and categorically false in the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they
Gentlemen's
have
time is
requested
expired.
to speak with you. Because the
Gentlemen's time is
victims have
expired. Gentleman
requested
yields
and you are
back.
not responding to them.
Director, yes or no, is the FBI still spying on parents at school board meetings?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Catholics?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still spying on President Trump?
I don't believe so.
Is the FBI still censoring Americans?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans for shopping at Cabela's or purchasing Bibles?
Nobody is targeted for their faith.
What?
Is the
That was
FBI
a
still
bold
targeting
statement.
Americans who are pro-life?
Nobody is targeting anyone for their
Is
beliefs.
the FBI still cooking the books on crime data?
Yeah, he got Charlie's
crime
name
data
wrong.
is
He
real.
called him Charlie King.
Is the FBI still purging agents
Called him
for
Charlie
conservative
King.
viewpoints?
I noticed that
No
too.
one at the
I
FBI has
fixed
asked
it
their
when he said
viewpoints
it.
on policy.
Is the FBI still labeling
Fixed the Mayan.
the Betsy Ross flag, the flag of the American Revolution?
You guys,
a
we got
hate
249 in here, 29 likes. Let's go. Double tap that screen,
Well,
guys.
maybe
Let's
that's
get this out to
why
more
you've been
people.
able to, what was the number? 23,000
interesting in
bad
the
guys
chat
you've
here.
arrested, a huge increase
More reactions,
from
the
the same
more
time
likes we
period
get,
in
the more
previous
people we get in here,
administration.
guys.
I think you said 1,400 predators, 4,000 children rescued. Were those the facts?
4,735% increase on children
as well as
Yeah.
those
And you got the
who
guy
will
that-
cover for them. Yeah,
Abbey
and this
Gate.
is children we're
We
talking
we
about
got
here,
the Abbey
guys.
Gate guy.
We had a guy from the 4th District of Ohio who lost
This
his life
was
there serving our
minors
country.
involved,
We
right?
appreciate
So
that.
it kind of
Maybe
hits,
when you're not
kind
focused
of
on
hits,
politics, you can actually
hits
do
a
what
nerve,
the FBI
right?
is supposed to do. Go get the bad guys, right?
That's what the men and women of the FBI do.
Director, did John Brennan lie to Congress? Let me just read a couple things actually before you answer that. 2 years ago, we had Mr. Brennan in for an interview, and I asked him, how'd you learn about the dossier in December of 2016? Mr. Brennan replied, I received a copy of it from the FBI, and the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. That's what John Brennan told the United States Congress.
That's what he told them.
7 weeks ago, the Director of National Intelligence told us this. John Brennan lied and denied using the dossier in the intelligence community assessment because he knew it was discredited. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee Brennan refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's main flaws, he responded, Yes, but doesn't it ring true? John Brennan lied to us?
Mr. Chairman, I won't stylize the evidence. What I will say is that the intelligence community assessment, those that created it, and any individual involved with it, is an ongoing investigation.
There's an investigation into what took place in December and January of December 2016, January 2017, when this whole thing started, this grand conspiracy. That is being investigated, is that right?
That has been publicly announced by the department.
That's been announced by the department. Did Chris Wray hide documents from this committee?
You would know better than me, sir.
Well, I think you told us like 700 pieces of information you've given this committee since you've been the director relative to just one incident, the Catholic memorandum from the Richmond field office.
I can give you the comparison, sir. Yeah, the Catholic memo, I believe we turned over 750 documents. In Mr. Ray's tenure, I believe they turned over 19 pages.
19 pages. You give it a 700. Why would Chris Wray hide information from this committee? You want to hazard a guess?
I'm sorry?
Hazard a guess why he would do that?
I don't know, sir.
I think maybe it was because they were...
Yeah, anybody involved with that stuff should be
priest,
locked away,
trying to get him to break the priest penitent confidence that exists. You think maybe that was the reason?
You'd have to ask him, sir.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. I want to read a few names here. Arctic Haze, Tropic Vortex, Riding Hood, Foggy
There's
Falls,
so many
Echoes,
people
Fade,
involved
Sirens,
in these
Lurch,
files.
Christmas. What
This
are
is
these
why
code
they don't want to
names,
release them.
about director?
Because it'll have like
You know?
crazy consequences.
Well, Arctic Haze, Tropic Vortex. I understand these are code names for leak investigations of classified information from the year 2017. Does that ring a bell?
Exactly, yeah.
In
If
terms
that's
of
the
leak
case, why not say so?
investigations, many of those are classified.
How did America let this
many
happen?
of those are ongoing, Mr. Chairman.
It's awful.
We are working
Just because
with you
minors
to
involved
produce
here,
documents
guys.
as we close
Even if
those
it wasn't, still be
investigations
awful,
or as we
but
declassify them.
Let me
makes
ask you
it
this
even
question.
worse now
This is
that
something
it's minors,
I've
right,
wondered
kids?
about, the way the FBI
Don't
used
know
to
any
work.
better.
Way this whole thing kind of, so many of these things unfolded. Seems to me you had all these people in government leaking information that then gets reported in the press. There's a story written about it, and then that article is then used to further the investigation and move forward with what they want to do. Did that take place back in 16 and 17?
That's the exact scenario that took place in the FISA application for Carter Page and the rest of the Trump campaign.
And that is frightening, because that's what the CIA is supposed to do in foreign countries. It's not supposed to happen to Americans, but it did, didn't it, Director?
Yes. And
not just any Americans, it happened with the President of the United States. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you were the key guy in helping expose that. And I think our country will be forever grateful for what you did to let the country know that was going on involving Americans, which is not supposed to happen, and not just, again, any American, but the President of the United States.
Let's go, you guys. Double tap that screen if you want me to continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning to the Vertical Live feed. Double tap that screen, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave the notifications on.
Diverted from their important work on crime and anti-terrorism to work on matters that are not critical to our safety. I'd like to play the video, the whole video.
Jeffrey
clip.
Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Well, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
So, but the Black Book, it's not just sitting, I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the Black Book.
36 likes. Let's go, you guys. Thank you guys very
that
much.
Attitude of let it all out.
Forget to like and subscribe.
We're getting reports of actions that are
For anyone that's just new here, if you just scrolled in, we bring you guys live breaking news every morning.
Diversions of FBI resources. For example, an FBI whistleblower reported that you were pressured by the Attorney General to place 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts.
I would describe him as a businessman,
roughly 100,000
actor,
Epstein-related records.
and
to redact
now
President Trump's
very
name
big
from the
political
files.
figure, President of the United States.
Reported this, that you directed FBI special agents from the New York and Washington field offices to join the Bureau's FOIA employees in Winchester and another building a few miles away, and that while reviewing the Epstein files, FBI personnel identified numerous references to Trump in the documents, and people familiar with the matter said that Trump's name, along with other high-profile individuals, was blacked out. Now, the New York Times reports, and this is a quote, Justice Department officials diverted hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors from their regular duties to go through the documents at least 4 times, including once to flag any references to Mr. Trump and other prominent figures. Details of the review were based on accounts by 3 former FBI and Justice Department officials who spoke on condition of anonymity because of fears of retaliation, and further that the FBI finished after they finished its review of the files and materials was sent to a team of Justice Department lawyers who double-checked the FBI's redactions.
Well, I mean,
and, quote, were instructed to flag any mentions of Mr. Trump and
I don't have
other,
enough information for that, I don't think, really, to be honest.
I have 3 questions for you, Mr. Patel,
you guys know
about this. First, how many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? Was it more than 100, more than 1,000? Were the agents who were pulled from their duties to redact the president's name from the Epstein files working on criminal cases or national security cases or child sex trafficking cases? And are the number of agents that have been reported diverted for these purposes, is that accurate?
No.
No what?
Everything is about him and him only?
I said it wasn't.
So
well, yeah,
you're
he's
saying
really
that none of this happened?
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
Okay.
Entertaining.
How many times did President Trump appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has.
No, that's not the question. I asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
Tell us a joke.
It's your testimony. You do not know that answer.
A number of times, no.
Could you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what they were working on?
When you say diverted, you make it seem as if agents were pulled off what they do all the time. Agents at the FBI masterfully do double duty and triple duty. And because of the public's interest in this case, we flexed resources to make sure that we could answer the public's signal demand. So do you want us to look through the material and provide it to you, or you do not want us to do that?
So it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter, that this was a top priority to go through this material to look for Mr. Trump's name. Is that your testimony? That's the highest priority for the FBI?
What's one of the most impressive things about the FBI leadership and the careers that are in place is that they make the decisions on who to send where on priorities and make sure the mission needs are not hurt. And that's what happened here.
It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high
Entertainment
priority.
is not governance?
When we have
No.
crime, we have
No, I know.
national security threats, we have terrorism threats, we have murders such as that occurred, unfortunately, with Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that that's
Awful.
your highest priority. And with that, Mr. Chairman,
That's
I yield
literally
back.
not what I said.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
He's a master at not answering direct
Director,
questions.
is President Trump implicated in
Little
any
boy that
wrongdoing
burned down the house
related to
somewhere.
Jeffrey
Stop.
Epstein?
You got a question about it. Yeah.
Based on the entirety of the evidence that we have, absolutely not.
The president is not
Adolescent
implicated.
pouting is not leadership.
Correct.
No.
Thank you.
Mike and Lynn says, I agree. You
I
know,
want to talk a little bit about
where I'm
China's
coming
malign
from, though, you know what I'm
influence
saying?
here in America. And
You know how it
we've
be on
seen
YouTube,
spy
right?
balloons traverse
So-
the United States. We've seen police stations in communities around America. And sitting in the chair you're in just 2 years ago, there was a sheriff from Cochise County,
Censorship is
Arizona,
real, though.
Mark Daniels, that was here, who said that the
This would be the latest
exponential
hearing.
increase in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into
Mike, welcome in.
America
Welcome
is
in.
directly related to the open borders policies of the previous administration. Do you agree with Sheriff Daniels' characterization?
In large part, yes.
So, since you've been director, has there been a reduction with, I mean, we've talked about how the border is largely secure now, right?
Largely secure.
The southern border, yes, sir.
The southern border is largely secure. Has there been a concomitant reduction or a reduction in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into America?
There has been a massive reduction
Yeah,
to
that
the tune
fent
of,
is awful.
we've seized more than 25% year to
Got
date
them all
this year than the
zombies out
prior
on the
year.
street,
And
guys.
that's enough fentanyl to kill 120 million Americans.
I mean, I
Does
see it
China
in my
play a
small
role
city.
in this fentanyl that's coming to America?
As I stated in my opening, sir, what they do and the companies in China, mainland China, do is produce the precursors and the cutting agents that they ship overseas through various countries into the Mexican drug cartels who produce it. So they basically are the cooks in terms of the ingredients.
Tell us, what is the FBI doing to stop China from delivering death to America?
So for the first time in a decade, I actually reached out to my counterpart at the Ministry of Public Security. No one at the FBI had done so, to engage.
Ministry of
Guys,
Security.
you're just new here. Don't forget to double tap that screen,
Like
the live stream,
conversation to say, hey, can we have
subscribe to the channel
a certain
for more.
number of these
Bringing you
precursor
guys breaking news
chemicals
every morning.
listed in China so that they become illegal and illegal to trade. We're also working with our counterparts in places like India and Guatemala because the transshipment routes of the precursors, the Mexican drug cartels have gotten creative, and instead of coming directly to America, are going into these countries. And we've had massive success in India and Guatemala, and in those
38 likes, guys. 163 people watching right now. Let's go. Double tap, guys.
Into
You
those
want me to
countries,
continue
which
bringing
are
you guys
ultimately
live
destined
breaking
to
news
America.
with
So those
vertical
people
live
that are
feed every
working with
morning?
security agencies have been working with you. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
So I want to turn to a couple cases that are at the University of Michigan, where Chinese nationals, on behalf of the Chinese government, smuggled in illicit biological materials, stuff that can harm our agricultural industry. What actions are you taking as we see repeated stories of Chinese nationals doing this in the United States?
So just that, sir. In this calendar year alone, as I was mentioning, our counterintelligence operations and cases brought against the Chinese are up by, I think, something like 40%. And specifically, the cases in Michigan
40%.
show two threat streams, not just against our agricultural industry, which is a threat to national security, but they were also bringing in chemical agents and mushrooms, I'm not the exact expert, that would have ultimately hurt our population. We arrested and charged all of those individuals, and we are aggressively going after them in every single state because they weren't doing it in Michigan
15-minute welcome in.
You research universities across the
If you're
United
just new here,
States
don't
be
forget to
doing
double
a
tap
thorough
that
job
screen,
of vetting
like the live
Chinese
stream, so we can
nationals
continue
that are
bringing you
coming
guys live
to
breaking news
their universities.
every morning.
They should.
Turning to spying in America, you know, we heard the stories about Senator Dianne Feinstein's driver, who was a Chinese spy. We're familiar with Linda Sun, who worked in Governor Hochul's office, Christine Fang in California. What are you doing to find these people who are Chinese spies that are trying to burrow themselves into the politics of America? Because we know it's happening, right?
Remember the drones?
Yes.
In summertime there?
What our
counterintelligence
unit
Chinese
is doing
spies, apparently,
is
or something.
aggressively seeking the intelligence into where these individuals are working. Then we are utilizing our operational authorities to go in and investigate them either through our human source networks and collecting information through lawful process, online search warrants and data so that we can bring proper arrest charges and publicize to the world what they're doing here. And just because we've caught a few doesn't mean we've caught everybody. We've got a lot more to go.
I get one more quick question in. The FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin, Hannah Dugan, for interfering with a federal law enforcement operation.
Arrested a judge.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So.
It is a judge above the law here in the United States of America.
Well, no one is, and that case is ongoing. But as you stated, and these allegations that there was an interference in a federal lawfully executed federal law enforcement priority that was interfered with.
I yield back, Mr.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Patel, I believe you had primary importance in starting Operation Viper in Memphis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Operation Viper brought in
Operation
the FBI,
Viper.
the DEA, the ATF, to
Everybody
help
involved.
Memphis police in policing the city.
That'll be phase 2, sir. Phase 1 was FBI and local law enforcement in Memphis for the last few months.
Okay. You did a good job, and the police director and the mayor have told me that has been helpful, the FBI working with the police. And the FBI are trained in law
40
enforcement.
likes, let's go, you guys.
Miranda
Double tap
rights,
that
They know how to do
screen.
policing, and they do a good job working with the police.
Subscribe to the channel so I can continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning.
Do you think that the National Guard is necessary
To the vertical
do the
live
work
stream.
that the FBI is doing now?
Short
Thank
speed.
you. I do think it's necessary to finish it. What we've done is 500 arrests in Memphis and 110 federal indictments. But what we need to do is we've only secured a piece of where the criminal conduct is occurring in Memphis, and we can't work inside perimeters that are not established and
Judges,
safe, and we don't have the
paragraph.
manpower
Yeah.
to give us the space to fully go into the areas where the criminal activity remains.
Well, are you suggesting that the National Guard is going to go into the more heavily crime areas?
They're going to establish, like they did in Washington, D.C., perimeters where local law enforcement and the FBI, DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshals can go into. We can't be going into all these areas knowing that they're extremely volatile and jeopardizing the safety of our agents.
Did the National Guard do anything in Washington to help the FBI stay safe from these dangerous elements?
They established perimeters.
Established
And
perimeters.
the criminals knew about it, so they...
It was a visible force, sir, so they kind of saw it.
Well, what you did, I commend you for what you did.
What do you guys think about all
FBI
this?
Coming in. We have a crime
Drop it in
problem
the comments
Memphis.
below.
The FBI has helped. DEA will help, and the ATF.
Don't forget to
will
like
help.
and subscribe,
I don't
guys.
think the National Guard's going to help, and what I've seen, they're not trained in law enforcement, are they?
No, sir.
And so that could be a problem. Who will direct the National Guard in Memphis? Will it be? Will they have control over your agents?
No, sir, they won't.
Who will have control over your agents? You?
Well, the SAC and then ultimately the chain of command up to Washington, D.C. will control the FBI, but there's a task force that was put together that is going to be led by an interagency. The heads of U.S. Marshals, DEA, and FBI will be working together with DHS collectively on this.
Have you visited
Silva,
Memphis
welcome in
before?
from Brazil. Welcome in Brazil.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
forget to like and subscribe
know
if
how
you're
good
just
a
new
city
here.
it
We
is.
bring you
I
guys
love
live
Memphis.
breaking news through the vertical live stream
of
to the
us-
shorts feed every morning.
Memphis is a great city.
All
great
we ask
history,
is you like and
Civil
subscribe.
Rights
That
Museum.
helps us out
Might
more
say
than you
something
know.
about slavery, but that was the history. It needs to be taught. Blues, Elvis,
Beale Street.
Beale Street, right? Barbecue, and people should come. It's not a troubled city. We've got some crime, but it's not a troubled city. We're not troubled, and we love our city. And we hope that the National Guard doesn't come in and cause people to have questions about Memphis because it's a city they should visit. Let me ask you this about, you said that the homicide rates are coming down to an all-time low.
All-time
In
low,
modern
guys.
recorded U.S. history, yes,
When
sir.
does modern recorded history start?
I think the FBI, and I'll get back to you on this, has stats on that going back about 30 years, sir.
Okay, I was thinking back to Ozzie and Harriet, and I didn't think you could beat Ozzie and Harriet's time.
Oh,
Secondly, you mentioned the Epstein case. Did any of the women that were
Epstein.
victims, and they came up here and had a press conference and all, did any of them contact your office and ask to give information?
to my knowledge, no, sir.
If they did, let me ask you first, is there a statute of limitations on sex crimes like that, with sex with a minor, rape?
The DOJ is the expert, but I do not believe there's a statute on that, limitations on that.
So if there's not a statute of limitations, should you not be interviewing those people who know who raped them and the names and the places and give you that information? That seems like that's a treasure trove of information, and it's a serious, serious, serious number of crimes.
Sir, I couldn't agree with you more. We've been very public about asking individuals to come forward with new information, and we would run out every single lead on that.
Well, I'm sure the women will come forward, especially today, to assure that they will get an opportunity, because that seems like something we ought to do.
Yes, the women are going to come forward. They have come forward, a lot of them, right?
Mr. Driscoll, what was his reputation?
I can't comment on Mr. Driscoll's matter. It's an ongoing litigation.
Yeah, but his reputation you could tell us about.
I can't tell you about his reputation. His work has been laid out in that lawsuit.
How many of the FBI agents who worked on the January 6th case have been fired?
Heather,
I don't
welcome
have
in.
that number, sir.
Do you have a
From Biden's
ballpark figure?
administration.
No, but I can
done the
tell you
same
that
thing.
individuals
Probably.
based on case assignments.
If you're just new
the
here,
FBI
don't
that
forget
I
to like the
have
live
led have
stream,
not
double
been
tap that
terminated for case
screen,
assignments.
subscribe to the channel for more so
Thank
we
you,
can
sir.
continue
Come back
bringing you
to
guys
Memphis
live
and
breaking
work
news
with Kevin Kane
every
in our-
morning
in our
through the
tourism
vertical
bureau.
live
He's
stream.
great.
And thank you for your work in Memphis.
Gentleman, yes, back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6-story played
Look,
out.
guys, we
for
got
years in
42
plain
likes up
sight.
there.
And Acosta is
42
quoted
likes
in
somewhere up here.
saying,
Double
"I
tap
was
that
told
screen, guys.
Epstein
We
belonged
continue
to
bringing you guys
intelligence
live
and to
breaking
leave
news
it
every
alone."
morning.
The second document is entitled "What Epstein's
Presidential
Bodyguard
News,
Warned
Armed
About
Forces,
His
Ladies and
CIA
Gentlemen,
Connections."
Personal
The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled
Imagine
"Epstein's
sex."
Private
Yeah.
Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief." And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings
Thank you, guys.
with
Thank you,
Jeffrey
guys.
Epstein. He was the former
forget
Prime
to
Minister
subscribe
of
to the
Israel
channel
and
too,
head
guys.
of military intelligence
Up here.
for Israel.
Without objection.
It may have
here?
held that title
I think it's
when
up here.
he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The
Yeah,
gentleman
right
from
up
Maryland's
there.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This
Subscribe
is
to the
Judge
channel, like the
Engelmayer's
video.
decision from August in U.S. versus
Helps
Epstein,
me continue
stating
doing this
the
every morning for
government's
you guys.
100,000
Bringing you guys
pages
the live
of
breaking
Epstein
news
files
every morning.
dwarfs the
To the vertical
70-odd
live stream.
pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection.
It's not only
Kentucky is recognized
unpresidential,
for
it's
5
just
minutes.
immature.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007.
Well, they should be able to get
and
new
that the
search
non-prosecution
warrants and
agreement
just update.
hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints
But hey, what do I know,
only
right?
apply
What
to
do I
Southern
know?
District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced
45
many
likes.
things,
Let's go,
including a
guys.
series
Thank you guys
of
very
FD
much.
302 documents. According to victims
Helps us big time with the algorithm,
who
guys.
cooperated
Pushes
with the
this
FBI
out there
in that
more.
investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia
it's awful when
Roberts.
minors are
You free?
involved.
May she rest
It's awful
in
when
peace.
anybody's
That
involved,
list
really, when you think
also
about kids,
includes
you gotta
at
think, that's
least
just
19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few
brutal.
$100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock
See
star,
what I mean, guys?
one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada.
See how deep it goes?
We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control.
There's so
I don't
many
know
people
exactly
involved.
who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched
But at this
any
point, they got to release the
investigations
files.
into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Probably.
Sir,
say no.
I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's
The
possession?
302 documents.
They
He hasn't
reviewed all
seen
that,
them.
yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents that where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here
Why wouldn't
and-
he personally
and in front
go
of the
through
Senate
it
and
if
say
he's
there
the
are
director
no
of the FBI?
names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release
You
the
think he would
documents
want to
the
dig
Oversight
in on it a
Committee
little bit more
on the day
himself,
of
right?
my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
That would make him more
I don't know
credible
what
if he
day
did,
that was,
right?
so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted
Trash
to see
channel,
it, would
welcome
they
in.
show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI. that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
Savannah, welcome in. If you're just new here, don't forget to double tap that screen, like the live stream, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue bringing you guys live.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
Las Vegas shooter.
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman
consent
yields back. Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from New York.
I ask unanimous consent to introduce an unsigned memorandum from July 7, 2025 that says we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
The ballroom. Yeah, they're building a ballroom.
Mr.
That's important.
Chairman, I have a unanimous
big, beautiful ballroom.
Request. It's a article entitled DOJ Deletes Study Showing Domestic Terrorists Are Most Often Right-Wing.
Objection.
Thank you.
Objection.
Gentleman from Georgia's recognized.
Let's go, you guys. Double tap
Thank
that
you, Mr.
screen,
Chairman.
like the video,
Director
subscribe
Patel,
to the
thank
channel.
You for being here today. I want to first talk about the significant role that the FBI plays in.
I'm just trying to bring you guys an
combating
unbiased opinion to
national
all of this
security
live
threats
breaking news,
posed by
national
our
news all around the
nation's
world, guys.
greatest
Right now, we're
threat,
focusing on USA,
our
of
nation's
course.
greatest security threat, China and the Chinese.
But if you guys like the
Communist
video,
Party.
subscribe to the channel.
It's a fact
I'll continue
that,
doing this every morning for you guys.
China is
right here on the live
America's
vertical live
most
stream.
significant national security threat. Isn't that correct?
I would say so, sir.
And you would
50
agree
likes.
with me
There we
that
go. Thank you, guys.
China wants to dominate the United States of America,
I think that's largely their plan.
and they want to dominate the world, both militarily and economically. Isn't that correct?
I think so.
And sir, you've been FBI director for the last.
And for everyone
what,
that's in
8
here
months?
today
7 months,
watching
yes.
the live
7
stream,
months,
thank you guys
and,
very much for showing
and
support
during
to the
that
channel.
time,
We're just trying to
have
bring
you
you guys
held
the
any
information.
stock in any companies founded
An
in
outside
China?
look at everything that's going on around the world, guys.
I don't believe so.
Well, you do own stock in a company known as Elite Depot, don't you?
Which one, sorry?
Elite Depot.
Elite
You
Depot.
own stock.
I think that's, I'll have to get back to you. I think it's a law firm, and it's a company out of Singapore.
Okay, well, no.
He
the
owns a company out of
Singapore,
Singapore. What's up with that?
which is owned by Elite Depot, is the Shein Company, which was founded in China, correct?
That company operates out.
Yo, you guys, for anybody that's just joining, we got some breaking news about Hamas here I'm going to play.
Information on right now is potentially a big one. Hamas has reportedly agreed, and we really want to make sure that that this is where they are right now, because we know.
I think
that
it's fine
Hamas
that
has
people
gone
are
back
attacking
and
ICE
forth on
facilities
this
and law
20-point
enforcement
deal
for
and
enforcing
whether
our
or not they would agree
laws.
to it
If
all.
we didn't
But
have
there
open
is
borders for 4 years, we
indications
wouldn't
that
see
they
this
are
happen, would we?
offering
No,
to
I don't want to
release the
see
remaining
any violence on
hostages,
anybody.
dead and alive.
I don't think
And
violence
this
is
coming
right at
from
all.
Reuters this afternoon. Now, President Trump gave the group until Sunday evening to accept his Gaza peace plan. We don't know if they have agreed to all of these elements, though. So we need to just sort of tread carefully here as we wait.
Hamas
to see
agrees to release
exactly
all
what
hostages.
They have agreed to. Let's bring in Fox
They didn't agree to
News
everything
and
of Trump's
National Review
proposal,
Institute
but
fellow
they have till
Douglas
tomorrow,
Murray,
right?
who joins us by phone. Douglas, good to have you with us. As I said, we're just getting the early indications on this. What are your thoughts at this point?
Right-wing
My
propaganda.
first thoughts are that it needs to be treated with considerable caution. Hamas know they have 2 more days, of course, and they are world experts at dragging things out. It seems from what the reports that have come through so far, they've said that they're willing to negotiate about these matters.
Heather
But it is
says Trump has every
certainly a
right,
cause for
every legal
optimism
right to
that
send
the
intrusive
release
federal
of
bill and
all
property.
of the remaining hostages
Right-wing common
is
sense.
first and foremost
Yeah, well, we
one
don't
thing
we don't want violence, guys. And
there
if
are
violence
2
breaks out at these
main
protests,
issues
you
that
already know what's going to
the
happen,
Israeli
right?
government has
So
said they wanted
they go in there
from the start of
protest, and
this
if they
war,
stayed,
they wanted
if
the
they would stay
return of all
peaceful, then it'd be
hostages,
fine. But usually,
and
Antifa
Hamas
results to
cease
violence, right?
running
So
the Gaza. If Hamas are indeed open to both of those things, There will be lots of negotiations still to come, but this could well mean the end of the war.
I hope it's the end of the war. That's awful.
All right. Douglas, I just want to bring you into what we're learning now, and that is exactly what I mentioned and exactly what Douglas is mentioning, which is that Hamas is trying to negotiate this deal, right? They have until Sunday night.
The truth says none of this is normal, no matter how much the crazies on the right want to convince you it is.
But not other parts.
All this violence? No, it's not normal. It's awful.
Put back up on the
We don't need political violence, guys. We don't need violence in any form. Spread the love, not the hate, guys. Positive vibes only.
Some of this, and Douglas, this outline of this plan calls for them to
they want a king.
Give up all their weapons
Lindsay says here.
and leave leadership in Gaza. Do you think that they will agree to that?
I think in some ways,
yeah, if it was peaceful, I'm all for it. But when you're harming others and destroying property, what is supposed to happen next? Stuff can't have a peaceful conversation. I mean, you can't be out there destroying stuff. No. Look at poor Gaza City here. Look at this. Look at these poor people that have to deal with this now. There's people like you and I. Now look at their homes destroyed to rubble.
It's a very comprehensive plan that
everything they have gone. Look, they're trying to just dry their clothes. And imagine having to deal with that. Imagine having to deal with this. This is awful, guys.
Not least of their Arab allies.
War is awful. Anything to do with war is awful.
This plan, saying to them, you are the only thing now keeping
the military's not the police. No,
the only entity that is keeping the war going. If everybody else in the region, including Israel, has agreed to these
the military is usually used not against
still refusing to do
your own
so.
people,
and
right?
The pressure on them in the region, and indeed from their backers.
Antifa, though, now where they're declared a terrorist organization, though, right?
Calls for some optimism.
Military go after terrorists, so
this time the deadline
not good for them.
Sunday is a real deadline.
Not good for them, guys.
Well, they have seen how President Trump deals with these real deadlines in the past, certainly in Iran.
Yeah, he gave them the deadline till tomorrow.
90 days to end their nuclear weapons program. That opportunity was not taken, and we saw what happened with the B-2 bombers.
And nuclear
in Iran,
doesn't.
And I think
that's
Hamas
not good
has
for
gotten
anybody.
The message, but
nobody. We don't need that.
This, as we have all said, caution is the word to keep in mind here. As we look at these early reports from Reuters that Hamas has accepted some of the elements of this plan.
Brutal, right? All right, let's go back over here.
Out of Taiwan.
Well, they changed their headquarters from China back in 2022 to Singapore for tax purposes. But
they're talking about his business that he owns or whatever.
I think his name is Charlie Zhu, and you own stock in the company that owns Shein.
Which I disclosed during my confirmation process.
Sheen? Isn't it Sheen? That's what he's talking
about. And now, do you still hold that stock in that Chinese company?
Yeah, I just wanted to show you guys the update there on Gaza. That's all that was.
The Department of Justice, who reviewed my material that was submitted during my confirmation process,
to defend against threats.
I was able to hold certain stocks, and they made a decision.
You still hold the stocks that you have? You still hold on to these Chinese stocks, these stocks in this Chinese company?
I disagree that it's a Chinese company, but I was in the DOJ, when you're appointed, makes a call on what you can and can't possess.
For anybody that's just new here, scrolling in, we're just watching the Cash Patel testimony on the Epstein files.
On platforms such as
don't forget to double tap that screen, like the live stream, subscribe to the channel for more, guys. Helps us bring you guys live breaking news every morning.
And to me, it seems inconsistent with your role as FBI director that you would own stock in a company that is based in a country that is the nation's premier national security threat. It's like you are putting your own financial security over the security of the nation.
I disagree with that characterization.
Well, I think the American people look at it like it's a classic situation of the fox guarding the hen house. If the FBI is charged with investigating espionage, economic espionage by companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and you are the director of the FBI, you've got a conflict of interest.
Sir, I would just show if there's any intimation that I'm
Why
against.
are you holding on to this stock?
It wasn't a decision I made.
And it's valued at up to $5 million as of when you last reported, correct? $5 million in stock?
No, I don't follow it.
You don't follow it, but you're still making money off of it.
I don't have any money off of anything. What I have done...
Trump's trade policies directly impact the value of that Chinese stock. Won't you agree with that?
Which trade policy? I'm not a trade expert.
Okay, all right.
But I want to tell you this.
Crazy on me today. Let me ask you this question. Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding pedophiles? Why are you protecting pedophiles?
Yeah, you don't want to protect them type of people. Like, come on.
Maybe the most offensive thing you could say to me, given the numbers.
Well, you have not released the Epstein files
of pedophiles.
You are aware of the Epstein client list that was published in the 18,000.
The gentleman has expired. The gentleman yields back.
Can he answer the question?
Can I just respond?
Of course, the gentleman can answer the question.
Since I took over the FBI, there has been a 33% increase.
Sir, all of that started under Christopher
Your
Wray.
time is done, but
it didn't.
The witness gets to answer the question, and then we'll go to our next.
FBI director, sir, and you're coming in here trying to take credit for something that a previous director instituted and largely brought to conclusion.
I take no
think it's
credit.
been clear that the director has numbers are so much better than the previous director.
It's
Dr. Patel, if you want to answer the question.
I take no credit. The men and women of the FBI have seen a 33% increase in the number of counterintelligence arrests out of the PR.
And so all of a sudden, when you coming in 7 months ago,
and
gentlemen's time has expired.
And on the pedophile accusation, we have arrested 1,500 child predators in the last 7 months.
Under investigations initiated by the prior
appreciate the director's good work, and we really appreciate that the time the gentleman has expired. We now go to the gentleman.
Let's go, you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
Thank the chairman. Thank the FBI director for coming before the committee. I assume the FBI director, Mr. Patel.
You guys want us to continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning. Like and subscribe, please.
Organized
effort more than you know.
On the left side of the political spectrum to advance criminal organizations being able to put more criminals out on the streets. That what we've seen this in daily action. Are you familiar with the report that came out this last Monday from the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund?
I'm not familiar with that, sorry.
So this report came out this past Monday, and it said that significant amount of the money flowing out of George Soros and other leftist organizations and funders has been funding DAs and prosecutors, and quote, many of these DAs had never managed an office, prosecuted a criminal case, developed organizational policies. In dozens of America's largest cities and counties, this report finds these progressive district attorneys have outsourced core parts of the American criminal justice system to activists and political donors, taking direction and advice on everything from staffing decisions and communication strategy.
What's going on here.
Organizations, it's a complex web of donors going in through these organizations to put radical DAs and prosecutors out there.
Look at this in London,
putting criminals
guys.
on the streets. Does the FBI director agree that this exists and is a problem?
I will accept the factual representation, and if that exists, it is a problem.
I'm going to listen in here for just 1 second, see what's going on over here. Oh, there's no volume on this, guys, but as you can see, there's quite the protest going on here. It looks more like a riot than a protest. Whatever is happening here. Film Junkie, welcome in, welcome in. Good morning, good morning. Just giving you guys a live look here at London. Whatever is going on here, look at this. This is crazy. See, it's all over the world, guys. It's not just in the United States.
Organizations such as TIDES, the Fair and Just
all over
Prosecution,
the world.
Brenner Center for Justice, Partnership for Safety and Justice, the Vera Institute of Justice, the amount of dollars flowing from George Soros through and to these organizations and to the various prosecutors that have resulted in increased crime on our streets, including the brutal murder
Film Junkie, I hope you're having
of
a wonderful
Ukrainian
morning, brother. I hope
refugee
you're having a
in
wonderful
Charlotte.
morning.
I bring that up because
Welcome back to the
that
live
is
stream.
one component of the problem. In addition, we have an organized effort targeting our border. The NGOs, the nonprofits in the deep pockets, the United Nations, charitable organizations, and a long list of over 250 organizations that the Center for Immigration Studies put out that lays out a complex web of organizations that were moving people into our country, knowing that they're dangerous, knowing that they're criminal, associated with taxpayer dollars flowing through the United Nations and donor dollars flowing through organizations, including ostensibly religious ones, putting these dangerous individuals on the street that resulted in fentanyl in our communities, that resulted in the death of Jocelyn Nungare, of hundreds, thousands even, as the director testified, 100,000 people dying from these narcotics every year. All of this in an organized effort, a complete
Film Junkie on a road trip. Well, drive safe. Stay safe out there, Film Junkie. Stay safe.
In addition,
hopefully you're going to get some sick content.
We've seen now with the
and enjoy
Southern
yourself.
Poverty Law Center and their hate map, targeting, for example, the Family Research Council.
And thank you, Film Junkie. I appreciate it. Appreciate
over
it.
a decade ago. Putting Charlie
Appreciate
Kirk,
everyone that tunes in.
putting a target.
Don't forget to double tap that
TPUSA,
screen, guys. Subscribe to the channel, like the video.
Other radical organizations that are very specifically organized in targeting conservatives and ordinary Americans.
Brian
How about
says
the organized
Trump
effort to infiltrate our schools and advance a transgender agenda and advance a radical agenda, perhaps one that we will see exposed further in the individual that actually shot Charlie Kirk. So here's my question.
So what is all going on with that? They're saying he wasn't the shooter, he is the shooter.
All legal channels
I'm not sure.
The truth wherever it may lead on this organized effort, one.
Whoever unalived
two,
Charlie Kirk.
Do you agree that Congress should
Was it
take
the young
all
fella?
action necessary to expose this web of dollars that are flowing to undermine our way of life? We got another minute in my time, then I'd like to hear from you on this topic broadly.
I'll keep it short. Investigatively speaking, we are doing the following. We are following the money. We are following the money
Yeah.
in
They
every
always follow the
organization
money.
and every person that is violating the federal code. And it doesn't matter what your background or ideology is. We are following the money. We are using legal process to follow that money, issuing subpoenas to follow that money, using grand juries to follow that money. And when we have results to recommend for prosecution to the Department of Justice, we will do that, and we will continue to publicize documents through Congress, yes, when we make these findings.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like unanimous consent to insert the record outsourcing justice by the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund that I alluded to before. I would ask unanimous consent to add a 2024 list provided by the Center for Immigration Studies on these United Nations and other affiliated groups that are responsible, over 250 of them, for moving individuals into our country in a coordinated effort. I would like a unanimous consent to insert a letter that I sent that currently has 33 members of the United States House of Representatives have signed on it, calling for a special select committee to pursue the organized effort from the radical left to target our way of life and undermine our security by putting criminals on the street and having our borders being wide open and putting us in danger.
Borders being wide open. So look at us here in Canada now.
Without objection. Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of unanimous
gentleman's requests.
Two terms is the law. Yeah, I thought you could only do 2 terms, right?
Senator Tom Cotton, dated last year, urging the U.S. to, quote, ensure that data from U.S. companies
this is all learning
is not
experience for me
harvested
too as well, guys.
by the Chinese Communist Party through the purchase of Xi'an software and technology.
The whole point of my live streams
And,
are to
also
spread the information and education and journalism.
Statement by Marco Rubio, then Senator Marco Rubio, which warned our UK allies about, quote, Xi'an's deep ties to the People's Republic of China.
Without objection.
Also, crime is the record crime is down in 2025. Trump doesn't deserve credit, which demonstrates that the crime rates have been decreasing since 2023, which was published by the Vera Institute. Also,
let's go, you guys. We got 150 people watching right now, 52 likes. Double tap that screen, guys. Double tap that screen if you want to continue getting live breaking news every morning. Double tap that screen and subscribe to the channel, of course.
July of 2024, GOP vows to make America safe again. Statistics contradict
you guys want some peaceful
crime claims.
Content? Check out my outdoor content on my channel as well. Very
out
relaxing.
of the American Presidency Project, dated January 17, 2025, record low crime during the Biden-Harris administration.
Without objection.
Also, Joe Biden is correct that violent crime is near a 50-year low, which was a PolitiFact publication of May 2024. And last but not least, a FBI releases 2024 reported crimes in the nation statistics. These are
Just
FBI
new here, don't forget to double tap that screen, like the video, and subscribe to the channel.
On August 5th, 2025.
Helps us bring you more live breaking news every morning.
Details decreases in murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery in 2024.
Without objection. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for unanimous consent.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit
Ahmed,
two sets
Heather,
of documents. The first is a series
Eric,
of
welcome
emails
in.
from
Paul,
the
welcome in.
victims of Jeffrey Epstein. They are making FOIA requests to get their own FBI files and not having any success. So I want to bring attention to that by submitting that to the record.
Don't forget to double tap that screen, like the live stream, so I can continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning.
For the record.
Subscribe to the channel.
I know we
helps more
don't
than you
usually
know.
read these. This one's not
Thank you.
readable.
Again, thank you guys.
It's
just bringing you
completely
guys.
Redacted.
Wow, look at all
For the
that
most part, the
redacted.
first 50 pages. This is actually the search warrant.
Just
that
trying to
was
bring you
served on
guys
James
live breaking news
O'Keefe,
every morning, guys. to the
For
vertical live
a
stream.
diary that he had already given to the government
Andrew, welcome
2
in.
months before. And as it turns out, there were no indictments here, yet he still doesn't know why he was raided, and I think he deserves to know. So,
Without objection.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Director, the first time you saw Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files. Did you close the files or keep reading?
Austin, welcome in. Patel is a joke. I wish we could.
I have reviewed not the entirety of the files, so
The truth
I
is, I thought right-wingers were
all of the
all
Epstein
up in
files?
arms
Personally, no.
against
You're
the
the director of the
weaponization
FBI.
of
This is the
government.
largest sex trafficking case the FBI has
Has
ever
FBI
been a
yes,
part of.
mhm.
Buck stops at the top, and your testimony today is
Andrew,
you have
welcome in,
not
Andrew.
reviewed all the files.
What I've been doing is
Don't
been
forget to double
busy
tap that
providing the
screen, like the
safest
live
country
stream
this
this morning.
country has seen in modern U.S. history in historic speed because the
Help
men and
us get
women of
out
the
there to more
FBI are given
people.
the resources to reduce the homicide rate, to reduce the
Spreading
drug trafficking
information,
rate,
education,
to
guys.
reduce the amount of children that are being trafficked and the
Well,
number
it
of
sounds like
pedophiles that
those
we have
children
arrested
being
is
trafficked would
record high.
appreciate the director reviewing the files. You said you don't know the number of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not
Could the
released
number at least
anyone's
be 1,000
name
times?
that we have not released anyone's
Could it
name in
at
the
least
Epstein
be
files
1,000
that has
times?
not been credible.
Director,
And
could it at
we have
least be
released
1,000 times?
every
Patel's only
piece of
been in here for
legally
how long?
permissible
What, the last 6 months or
information.
something?
You can
so-
characterize the numbers however you want it.
Reclaiming my time, Director.
This was all kind of thrown at
It
him
sounds
too,
like
right?
if you don't know the number, it could at least be.
This is why they're saying
1,000
he's
times.
unqualified for the job,
It's
right?
not.
Is it at
Apparently.
least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
Remember, guys,
Then
I'm
what's the
bringing you guys
number?
an unbiased
I don't know the
opinion.
number, but it's not that.
Do you think it might be your job to know the number?
Older look at
My
everything,
job
I'd
is
say.
to provide for the safety and security of this country. My job is not to engage in political
And that includes
innuendo
protecting
so you can go
sexual
out to the
assault victims.
sticks and get your 20-second hit in your fundraising
reclaiming my
article.
time,
They
Director.
keep going, reclaiming your time
We're
because
getting a
the
little
people of
heated here now.
California
If
are being
Trump- if the
underserved by
president-
your
If the
representation.
president is not implicated, why not release everything that involves him?
We have released everything, the president and anyone else's side, that is credible and lawfully be able to be released. Your fixation on this matter and baseless accusations that I'm hiding
also
child
Mr. Mass's
pedophiles is disgusting.
interest.
Anyone that says that needs to look at the stats alone. And go back to the state of California, who's receiving the biggest surge in FBI resources through my redeployment because the cities of Los Angeles, San Diego, and San
Reclaiming
Francisco
my time,
need it.
Director. Remembering your oath to tell the truth, did you ever tell Donald Trump his name is in the files?
I have never spoken to President Trump about the Epstein files.
Oh my,
Did
he's
you
never even
ever
spoken to
tell
him about them.
the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
The Attorney General and I have had numerous discussions about the entirety of the Epstein files and the reviews conducted by our team.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
And we have released where President Trump's
Did you,
name is in
it's
the
a simple
attorney's
question.
file.
Did you tell the Attorney General that the president's name is in the Epstein files?
During many conversations that the Attorney General and I have had on the matter of Epstein, we have reviewed
The question is
painstakingly
simple.
who
Did you
can
tell
be-
the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out
Yes
if
or
you're going to mock
no,
me?
Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No? A, B, C,
Director,
D, E,
did
F?
Listen to
it
him.
sounds
Do
like
it?
you don't want to tell us. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files?
Why don't you try serving your constituency by
Listen
focusing
to
on
this guy.
reducing violent crime in this country and the number of pedophiles that are illegally harbored in your sanctuary cities in California? I'll work with you on that. Do you want to work with us on that?
Director,
I
reclaim my
belong to
time.
the gentleman from California.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
The question has been asked and answered.
You've not answered it, and we will take
Cash
your
doesn't do
evasiveness
questions.
as a
He's-
consciousness of guilt. Director, did Donald Trump
Yeah,
ever
that
say to
seemed
you,
guilty to me,
just
right?
find and release the entire truth? Don't worry if I'm in it.
The instructions from the administration were to release all credible information, and we have done that.
Did Donald Trump ever provide information about Jeffrey Epstein as an informant?
Donald Trump has not been, and I can only speak for the FBI, an informant of the FBI.
So, Director, you've played this cute shell game where you say you can't release everything because the court has said that it legally is not allowed to be released, but the court calls bullshit. Judge Richard Berman said that when you went to the court, quote, information contained in the Epstein grand jury transcripts pales in comparison to Epstein investigation information and materials in the hands of the Department of Justice. So let's move on, Director. You wrote a book called Government Gangsters.
He wrote a
You
book.
identified 20 individuals in that book. You put me on that list, at the top of the list. Thank you. My children find it flattering. 20 of those individuals have been investigated or have had adverse actions. Director, considering that you have identified these people as, quote, government gangsters, will you recuse
Government
yourself
gangsters,
from making any investigation decisions about these individuals?
Anyone that has been terminated at the FBI has been done so
the
because
question
they failed
again.
to meet the muster in
Director,
their constitutional
I will
obligation.
work on the audio-visual capabilities.
I'm
of
going to
this room so
borrow
that
your
you can hear me.
terminology and call
I'm reclaiming
bullshit
my
on your
time.
entire career in
Ooh.
Congress.
I'm reclaiming my
It's
time.
been
Oh,
a
BS
disgrace
on
to the American
Director, I'm
people.
reclaiming my
You
time.
can reclaim your
Will you
time all you
recuse
want.
yourself?
Mr.
Chairman, you're going to allow a witness to speak this way?
Listen
Mr.
to this.
Chairman, would you give
recuse yourself, Director?
The gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman, would you admonish the witness not to insult members?
The gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman, just
committee will remember.
Quick point of order. Could the gentleman be extended an additional 20 seconds to complete his thoughts since the witness decided to interrupt him continuously?
And the witness will be able to respond if he wants. We'll make sure he has time to do that.
My question is, will you, Director, recuse yourself, yes or no, from investigating or making decisions about the 60 individuals, including myself, that you identified as government gangsters? Yes or no?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness may respond if he would like.
And the answer was no, as I heard.
Answer is no.
Correct.
Okay. The gentleman
For
from
anybody
Wisconsin.
that's just coming
the
in
gentleman
here
yields back to the gentleman from
today, we're
Wisconsin's
just watching the
recognized.
Cash Patel
Thank you,
testimony here on
Chairman.
the Epstein files.
Thank you, Director.
Don't forget to
Patel, for
like
being
and
here
subscribe
today.
to the channel if you want me to continue bringing you guys live breaking
I wanted
news
to
to
talk a
vertical
little
live
bit
stream
about
every
the
morning.
assassination of Charlie
Like and
Kirk
subscribe,
and the
guys.
FBI's
Helps more than you know.
subsequent investigation. I know it's really sensitive, and you can make the call as to whether or not. Obviously, it's something that you can respond to, but I think it's still fresh on many people's minds. I want to congratulate you and Utah law enforcement for the work you did in identifying the suspect and apprehending him. According to public reports, and I think this is what maybe it's, I still have questions about, and maybe the public does. According to public reports, the alleged shooter arrives on the Utah Valley University campus nearly 4 hours before the shooting. Was that your understanding? Is that kind of...
Just taking a live look at
I'll
what's
let the
going on
public
here in
reports
London
reflect
right now,
themselves.
guys.
I don't have
Look.
the exact timeline.
Okay, so we don't have any idea kind of his prep or how he set up or how he utilized that time when he first showed up on campus?
All of those are being currently investigated through our cell phone analysis and through our witness interviews, and the state of Utah has now announced charges seeking the death penalty against his suspects, so we're a little limited in what we can continue to say.
Sure, I understand. And the suspect, like you referred to, is then captured on security footage.
Crazy
jumping off
over
the
in
roof
London right now, guys.
of the
Look at
alleged
this.
shooting location, the Losey Center.
Crazy over there.
Do we have any idea how the suspect got up on the roof in the first place? I think for members of Congress, especially after Butler in Pennsylvania, it's just unimaginable.
There's just
that
a
there
quick
could
live
be
look
some
at what's
type of
going on over
security
there in London.
breakdown prior to an event of that size where somebody could access a rooftop.
So not commenting on the case, but having gone to the crime scene and walked the steps that we believe were taken, the roof was actually readily accessible through an exterior stairwell, so anyone could have gotten on it.
Okay. The suspect flees on foot to kind of this wooded area where he drops the rifle
wraps it in a towel, and then proceeds to his staged vehicle and basically drives home. So do we have any idea what the towel was about? Was it used later to identify a place where the firearm was left, or
what we can tell you is the towel, there was a screwdriver found on the rooftop, which DNA was collected off of, and the towel was found wrapped around the firearm in question in a wooded area next to the campus. All have been processed for DNA.
And then, according to the suspect's roommate, there were allegedly messages on instant messaging platforms, specifically Discord, suggesting the towel may have been used to identify that weapon's location. So the public reports have suggested that the shooter acted alone. Do we still believe that that's true? Do we have any idea as to whether or not those Discord messages led us to believe that the shooter may have had help in any way or assistance?
I can only speak to the FBI's investigation, and our investigation is ongoing, and we are interviewing any of those individuals involved in that chat and other individuals in the area.
Or the Cash Patel testimony.
So my suggestion, if there are accomplices, I'm sure this is something that the FBI is going to continue to investigate fully.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys, so I can continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning for the Vertical Live feed.
Because I don't know that that was necessarily the case with Butler, Pennsylvania. So thank you so much for your persistence kind of in this matter. There's still a lot of public questions that need to be asked. Let me shift to another topic very quickly. On July 31st, 2025, the DOJ and the CIA declassified the annex to Special Counsel John Durham's 2023 report on Operation Crossfire Hurricane. The 29-page Durham Annex contains previously classified information about, among other things, the investigative referral of the Clinton campaign plan. Why would somebody place documents in a burn bag related to this case?
In a burn bag?
That case is very much ongoing, so I can't comment on the stylization of the evidence we're collecting.
Can you comment at all on the Durham Annex, as I described it?
The Durham Annex, which has been publicly released thanks to the FBI's commitment to transparency, is one of the documents that's being utilized. And in general terms, speaking for burn bags, sir, a burn bag is what you use to put classified documents into generally, because that is literally how you destroy them.
So it appears that efforts were made by the Clinton campaign to reach out to the FBI agents or the Clinton sympathizers in the intelligence community in order to lead more credibility.
Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. You're just catching the tail end.
Do you think that's an accurate characterization?
Of the Random Thoughts Indoors live news reaction.
I'm not gonna characterize.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. It helps more than you guys know.
Thanks for being here today. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. The FBI searched Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan residence, correct?
I believe that happened in 2018. I think there was 2 locations, sir.
It's 2019, and in that residence, the FBI found a safe, correct?
Oh, here's the safe.
I don't have the catalog of evidence in front of me.
In that residence, the FBI found a safe, correct?
I'll accept your representation.
Okay. And in that
they found the safe.
The FBI found topless and lewd photographs of girls, correct?
Again, sir, I'll accept your representation. I don't know.
Yep.
Thank you. It was all over the media at the time. There's a New York Times article that says Jeffrey Epstein is indicted on sex charges as discovery of nude photos is disclosed, dated July 8th, 2019. And the Times reports a trove of lewd photographs of girls was discovered in a safe inside financier Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan mansion. Author Michael Wolff has conducted numerous interviews of Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to play for you a video clip of what Michael Wolff said Epstein told him was in the safe and what he showed the author was in this safe. So let's please play that clip now.
Elected. And I was sitting talking to Epstein, and he said, "Wait a minute, I got to show you something." And then he went into his safe, and he came out with photographs. They were Polaroids, I think, and he kind of spread them out like playing cards. And
What do you guys think about this? Is this a credible source?
There were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of took place. And I remember very vividly 3 of them. There are 2 in which Trump is, the girls, topless girls, are sitting on Trump's lap. And then a 3rd in which he has a stain
What do you guys
on the
think
front
about this
of his
now?
pants. And the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing.
So, Director Patel, I'm going to ask you a very broad and general question. As you know, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. There are, of course, photos showing Donald Trump together with Epstein, correct?
I don't have the entirety of the photographs, but I think they've been photographed in public together.
All right. Are there any photos showing Donald Trump with girls of an uncertain age?
No.
How do you know that?
Because that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years.
Well, you know what? That's just not true, because no one knew about the creepy birthday message that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein until the Wall Street Journal disclosed it, and then all of a sudden, the Epstein estate provides it to Congress.
Well,
so certainly,
59 likes. Let's go. One more. 60 likes. Let's see if we can get to 60 likes today before we end this live stream off today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Double tap that screen, guys, and I'll continue bringing you guys news live breaking news to the vertical live stream.
Talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to Michael Wolff.
Has the FBI asked?
But the FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI specifically
So Michael Wolff has
ever.
about 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein.
60 likes. Let's go, you guys. Let's go. Double tap.
I'm not saying they haven't. I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
All right. So if you could provide us an answer, that would be terrific. Sure. Well, let me ask you this question then. Have you looked at all the photos in Epstein files?
I have looked at all the information that the investigators who investigated this case have provided to.
Now he's saying he looked at it all. He's already looked at it all.
Was there that creepy birthday message that Donald Trump had written to Epstein?
You think that's a real birthday message?
The estate of Jeffrey Epstein.
You think that's Trump's signature on there? I don't know. I'm not convinced.
Okay, so that's great. So wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the frickin' FBI. You can subpoena the information from the estate, and you better do that.
That's literally not how it works.
I'm going to move on now and talk about Epstein's client list. You confirmed that exists. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed earlier this year that exists. I just want to ask you a simple question. Is Prince Andrew on Epstein's client list?
The material related to Prince Andrew has been made public.
Is Prince Andrew on the client list?
We have released the index of names that were in Jeffrey Epstein's.
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
The index has been released, and the index will speak for itself.
But he's asking.
America is a huge red flag. The FBI director could not answer whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's
Gentleman's
client
time has
list.
expired. I now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Now let's see what they say about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the director for being here and for his work over the last several months, removing the taint of partisanship that has infected the intelligence community over the past several years under the last administration, under the last several directors, standing up for law enforcement, standing up for the brave men and women who work in your agency. But
this is some really wild stuff, guys.
Straight, you know,
don't forget to double tap that screen, subscribe to the channel so I can continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning.
A dramatic spike in news stories that contain sensitive and sometimes classified details about the FBI's bogus Russia probe, about a leak a day. It's unacceptable that senior FBI officials coordinated to leak classified information to try and harm President Trump. Documents produced to the committee in August of this year revealed that the FBI interviewed a former Intelligence Committee staffer who gave details on a systematic process through which leaks of classified information were affected by then Chairman, now Senator Adam Schiff. Were these findings escalated within the Bureau's chain of command, and if so, to what level?
Sorry, were the findings escalated?
Were these findings
he doesn't like
given
answering the
to us
questions,
escalated within the Bureau's chain of command, and if so, what level? Did you receive this information?
That entire matter is currently under investigation by the people at the FBI that handle leaks of classified information.
All right, it's good to know that there is an ongoing investigation.
Let's go, you guys. If you're enjoying the live breaking news here on the Vertical live stream today, don't forget to double tap that screen. Subscribe to the channel for more live breaking news. Every morning that I can get you guys live breaking news, I will.
I can tell you, generally speaking, the leaks of classified information are detrimental to any work the FBI is doing.
Now, former Director James Comey testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee that he had never been an anonymous source, nor authorized anyone to be an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation. Was Comey's testimony true?
In reference to Director Comey, I'm very limited in what I can say because of what the current status of those matters are with the FBI and the Department of Justice. When I am able to make those public, I will.
Can you tell me if there's an ongoing investigation there?
Again, without identifying any individuals.
And he can't answer it.
Related to the information you're generally speaking about, there is an ongoing matter that has been under review by the Department and the FBI for some time.
Because we know that the documents that we received last month revealed that former Director Comey used Columbia University law professor as a conduit to leak stories to the media that contained classified information. Let me move on to the way that the FISA process was weaponized by past directors. Prior to your confirmation, you raised concerns about government misuse of FISA, including Section 702, stating that FISA was in need of major reform. Specifically, you highlighted that the Fisk report that the FBI had conducted 278,000 improper searches.
Look live here, guys, at London.
Do you remain concerned about governmental abuse of FISA in Section 702?
Look at this.
I'm always concerned, but what
Look
we've
at all
done
the people
since
there.
I became FBI director is implement new audit systems. We are nearing 100% review of the 702 query system that you are specifically referring to, and we've also eliminated anyone that has ever touched that database that has in any way made a mistake, whether intentional or not, and we have also
there's
identified a system in
no
which
audio
those
on this
going
clip here,
forward
guys.
who misuse the 702 system.
This is just a
they
live
don't
look
get
at
two
London
strikes.
right now with the
They get one and you're done.
huge protest going
I'm
on.
glad you mentioned you're continuing to audit because
I think
as you
that's
know,
what's
in
going
May,
on.
The New York Times reported you closed
Spread
the
some
FBI's
light in the
Office of
comments
Internal
below.
Auditing. Can you explain why you decided to close this office?
Yeah, because under the new restructuring of the FBI, to save resources, there were two different places doing the exact same thing. We have a specific division dedicated to audits. I didn't need another audit system doing the audits again. And so we folded some of those folks with their expertise into our specific division and then took the rest of those folks and are moving them out across the country.
Under previous FBI leadership, FBI agents were found to have lied to the Fisk. There have been hundreds of thousands of violations of the querying standards. In light of past violations, what action is the FBI taking to ensure that similar abuses do not occur in the future?
Exactly what I've outlined. You cannot have access to the 702 query system if you improperly queried that system at all at any time in your career.
Okay, at a Senate hearing 2 years ago, your predecessor, Director Wray, testified FBI had previously purchased U.S. phone geolocation data for a specific national security pilot project and further stated that the project had not been active for some time.
The U.S. has the technology to go in any of these phones, see anything, and track where you're at.
Does the FBI purchase location data?
Most likely you probably agreed to it on some terms and conditions.
Brokers?
I don't believe so, but I'll get back to you.
Thank you, that'd be important. I appreciate that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Washington's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, before you joined the FBI, you had very strong opinions about what the FBI was hiding regarding Jeffrey Epstein. In a September 2023 interview with Glenn Beck, you said, "The Black Book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI." In
Now
December
he's the director of the
2023, you
FBI,
said,
so he
"Let
should
us
be
know
under
who
the direct control of
pedophiles
it,
are."
right?
Even for a short time after becoming FBI director, in February of 2025, you tweeted, quote, "There will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned." In June, you told Joe Rogan, quote, "We've reviewed all the information. We're going to give you every single thing we have and can." But then suddenly in July, everything changed. You and Attorney General Pam Bondi released one video and said that there was nothing more to see. Your July memo says you uncovered more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence, but that you had decided no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. That is a quote.
Nothing at all there, Heather. Nothing at all.
Mr.
Nothing wrong
Patel,
with being
is
a
that
proud American.
suddenly you discovered that Donald Trump's
Should be
name
proud of
was
where you're
all
from.
over these
Should
files,
be anyway.
and you started a giant cover-up. So you are under oath, Mr. Patel. You just testified to Mr. Swalwell that you did not speak to the president about the Epstein files. To your knowledge, did Attorney General Pam Bondi speak to the president about what was in the Epstein files?
I can't speak for Attorney General Pam Bondi.
So to your knowledge, you don't have any information. The question was, do you have any knowledge? Do you have any knowledge?
I can't speak.
You are refusing to answer the question. So let me tell you that the Wall Street Journal reported that in May, Bondi told Trump that he was in the Epstein files, and at the same meeting said that the DOJ did not plan to release the files. Yesterday, you testified to Senator Kennedy that there was, quote, no credible information that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone else, and that you have, quote, continuously and publicly asked the public to come forward with more information, and we'll look into it. Today, in response to Mr. Massey's question, you appear to say that the survivors were not credible. These are survivors.
That's not at all what I said.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you this in a second, but let me tell you about the survivors, and let's bring them up here into the room.
It's getting heated now. It's getting heated now.
Who came to the Hill and testified that they were groomed and raped at the age of 14 and 16 years old, and they called to meet with the president and to meet with the FBI and to have people investigate their claims. Some of them have never testified before. If you are so interested in getting the public to submit any information, why have you not met with them? You said you haven't met with them. Have you met with them? I'll give you one more chance.
My job as the FBI director is to invite
Is the answer yes or no to whether or not you met with these women who were sexually abused and raped?
Oh my.
Any insinuation by you or any people on your side that I'm not manhunting child predators and sex traffickers, just look at the stats. And you talk about cover-ups, man.
Mr. Chairman,
you talk about cover-ups.
And I will take as much time as
Where were you during the Obama and Biden administrations when these so-called cover-ups were going on? Why didn't anyone in those administrations talk to any of these purported witnesses? I have welcomed every single person to provide credible information.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Washington.
And I'm going to take another
When you accuse the witness of something, he's allowed to respond. That's how it works.
Listen, he didn't even, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you have always been fair, but this is not fair. No, this is my time, and he said that the witnesses were not credible.
Seconds of time.
I'm going to get an additional minute of time because that's how much time
you won't get a minute. You'll get some seconds. What we think is under 5 minutes. You don't get to demand how much time you get. That's not how it works.
Mr. Patel.
Wow, she going
Are
off.
the victims of the Jeffrey Epstein horrific trafficking ring, are they credible?
Any person with information about ongoing sexual trafficking.
I'm asking you if they're credible.
Ma'am, I'm
What a
commenting on the
circus.
evidence
This is crazy, guys.
We have routinely
Release
asked for
the files.
people to come forward with more evidence, and we will look at it. And the evidence that we have.
Welcoming everybody. If you're just new here, we're bringing you guys live breaking news every morning.
And they determined, not me. They
Like and
determined
subscribe,
that
guys.
information was not credible.
Chairman, he's not letting me even ask my questions.
You ask the questions, he gives an answer. You may not like what he says, but that doesn't mean you get to interrupt
He's not answering
him.
my question.
Mr. Chairman, could we restore the gentlelady 45 seconds so she can
We will give her
complete
additional 30 seconds, which is what I said
I'm
earlier.
going to keep taking my time
No,
because
you'll take
here's
the time
thing.
that you get.
You
get
are
30
not
seconds.
answering the question. The question
I
is,
have. You just don't like the answer.
Are these women credible? It's a yes or no answer.
I have answered the question.
Well,
and I
what is
keep
the
telling
answer?
you, I'm the only FBI director that has welcomed
This
new
lady's
information in this case.
manipulation.
This administration is the only one that has welcomed any new information in this
Is there
case.
a yes or no to
Present
whether the
new credible
victims are
information.
credible?
Present new information.
Are the victims credible or not?
I'll tell you what happened in the last Trump administration.
Are they credible or not? You can't even
Victims
say.
credibly came forward, and you know what happened? President Trump authorized the indictments of
President
Jeffrey
Trump
Epstein.
called
Not
them
Biden,
a hoax.
not Obama.
President Trump
no one
called
else.
the entire thing a Democratic hoax. So I would like to ask
The
you
gentlelady's time has
if you
expired.
will
I gave her
meet-
the additional
if you-
45 seconds she
if you
requested.
will
The
meet-
gentlelady
going,
yields
though.
back. The gentleman from
Mr.
New
Chairman,
Jersey is
I would like
recognized
to
for his
ask if
5
you would
minutes.
meet
He has a lot to
with
say.
the women who were sexually
Time does not
abused
belong.
and raped and groomed at the ages of 14
Oh,
and
gross
16 years
looking
old. Are you
sin.
going to cover up? Are you going to continue to cover up for the rich and powerful men,
Yeah, we can't be covering up for people like that, guys.
I can yell too, Mr. Chairman, but I don't want to yell about this.
The time belongs to the gentleman from New Jersey. I appreciate the gentlelady yielding back.
Mr. Patel?
Go ahead.
Will you allow them to testify to you,
Mr. Patel? Mr. Patel, thank you for being here. I know it's been an interesting and difficult 2 days. And I wasn't going to talk about the Epstein thing because there's a lot of other issues that affect the FBI, but I have to say a few words. I've sat here, I've listened to this, I've watched it, and you know, my Democratic colleagues are so concerned now, Mr. Patel. All of a sudden, where were they last year? Where were they the year before? Where were they the year before that? Where was the last president in any of this? Well, all I know, the only thing I see is a single letter from the ranking
to like and subscribe, you guys.
that was sent in 2019.
That way I can continue bringing you guys live breaking news every morning.
Some people signed on to that. Most of the truth, the real truth, let's be honest, let's be intellectually honest.
Just here trying to spread the information, guys.
The real
Unbiased
truth
opinion.
Is we didn't hear from them at
An
all.
outside look at what's going on.
Anybody of them. Hardly any of them ever mentioned it. Some of them didn't mention it at all until the beginning of this year. Earlier in the year it started. Not one Democrat asked Director Wray.
Be careful because you guys know YouTube censors a lot, right? So that's why I say double tap, share this out, like the video, subscribe to the channel.
This committee. Nobody was that concerned. Where was the concern for the victims then? Where was the moral righteousness then? Where was the outrage then? Where was the sense of duty then? Where was the desire for accountability then? Where was the urgency for justice then? Most of all, where the hell was the integrity then? You know what the truth is. Let's just say it, man. Tell the truth time. The truth is, it's politically useful for them to try to do this now, even though they didn't give a damn about it in the past. And you know what? That's an insult to the victims, and that's an insult to America. Continue to do the work you're doing. Continue to uncover what needs to be uncovered. One real quick thing before I say anything to 9/11. We know that was mishandled by the past director and by the past FBIs. There are family members here. There are family members who are concerned. God Almighty, we want to get to the truth of that. I ask you, please, to meet with them, to talk to them, and to investigate this with truth. You know, in the Biden administration, we went through a very dark and difficult period of time. The FBI trust was broken with the people. Catholics were, this is the stuff we've been talking about, were labeled radical threats for praying in their churches with their rosaries. Parents at school boards were called terrorists for standing up for their children. Hindu holy men in New Jersey. We have the largest Hindu temple in the world. They were attacked. They were put up against the wall with guns to their heads. So it isn't just a Catholic or Christian thing. American Jews were targeted in colleges and universities, and a lot of folks in the FBI, in the past FBI, not this one, didn't give a damn. We can't go back to targeting religion. We can't go back to silencing free speech. The Biden administration did that. So I got questions for you. Hopefully thoughtful questions that you can answer for us in a thoughtful way. How is this FBI now, under your leadership, how are we restoring trust for Catholics, for Hindus, for Jews, for parents, for all the other, for just American people that were targeted by FISA because they had a different viewpoint? How are we restoring that trust in the FBI?
Multiple ways, sir. One, and maybe most importantly, is through transparency and providing the American public with the material so they can see, read it themselves as to what the abuses were in the past, whether it relates to the Catholic memo or the Hindu incident you talked about at the largest temple in North America. Any institution of faith and any member of faith will not be investigated by this FBI because they are men and women of faith ever, period.
And nor should they. Nor should they. I don't mean to interrupt you, but my God, of all the amendments to the country,
let's go, you guys. 69 likes, 69 likes. Let's go. Double tap that screen. Subscribe to the channel for more live breaking news coverage.
That's it. Sorry.
Okay. The Richmond memo was driven by a reliance on sources. The Southern Poverty Law Center. You know, the words sound nice, but the organization's not so nice. And we've seen the Anti-Defamation League distort data that counts as violence. Have you been able to identify and eliminate these kinds of partisan sources? We welcome all sources, but we want objectivity and neutrality and decency in the way we report all this. Have you been able to uncover any information there? How do we make sure our sources are good in the future?
We have reviewed the source processes that infiltrate any institutions of faith, and they will no longer be going into institutions of faith.
Let's switch over, take another live look at London here, guys.
They will be directed towards criminal activity and protecting the homeland, the two most important missions the FBI
Live view
has,
of London
and that's
right
what we're
here.
going to continue to do.
Good. And I'll say this, there was a lot of bull
What is going on over there?
A lot of, you know what, and I'm not going to say it because I respect the institution so much going
Look
on
at
around
what's
here.
going on over there, guys.
Continue to do the work of the people. You are here for that reason. The administration is here for that reason. It was weaponized and politicized, the FBI, in the past. I hope to God we never, ever see that again. One of the darkest parts of American history. Thank you, Mr. Patel. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized for UC.
I would like to introduce a CNN article that explains how an alleged top leader of the MS-13 gang was dismissed. His case was dismissed in Brooklyn so that he could be deported back to El Salvador, even though he was charged with murder.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I have some unanimous consent
The lady from
requests.
Washington is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article titled "Justice Department Told Trump in May that his name is among many in the Epstein
Yeah, you
files."
can only do the 2 terms.
Objection.
I have another one that is a July 2025 article by the New York Times entitled "How a Frantic Scouring of the Epstein Files Consumed the Justice Department," stating that DOJ and FBI employees reviewing the Epstein files were instructed to flag any mentions of Trump and other celebrities.
Without objection.
And I have another unanimous consent request to enter into the record an August 2025 article by The Guardian entitled "Ghislaine Maxwell Hinted at Epstein's Ties to Trump Officials. Why Wasn't She Pressed for Names?" stating that Maxwell told Deputy U.S. Attorney Todd Blanche that some of the, quote, cast of characters around Epstein are in Trump's cabinet.
Without objection. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Patel, for coming before us to testify today. I am concerned by your repeated claims that you're not able to disclose anything further about the Epstein investigation and files, and that there's no evidence of a broader conspiracy or other people who should be charged, because the American people aren't buying that you've been transparent or that there's nothing further to be seen. In your exchange with my colleague, Mr. Roy, you reiterated something that I heard you say yesterday in your Senate testimony, and that is, under your direction, the FBI will always follow the money. Is that right?
Follow the money, yep.
The money,
I mean, you
did
got
say?
to.
Yes, you said
That'll
you'll
kind
follow
of
the money.
point you in the right
That's
direction, right?
And just now you said you welcome the opportunity to investigate new evidence. So there has been significant recent reporting just in the last couple of weeks that after
Let's go, you guys. Let's go. Double tap that
4
screen.
major banks
If you're just new
flagged
here, we're
more
covering the
than
Patel
$1.5
testimony here in the Epstein
billion
files
in
controversy.
suspicious transactions connected to him,
Bringing you
that
guys live
suggested
breaking
a
news
massive
through the vertical live
conspiracy
stream.
related to his child sex trafficking activities. Director Patel, has the FBI reviewed the $1.5 billion in suspicious bank transactions flagged to the government relating to Epstein and his co-conspirators?
I know the FBI has reviewed numerous SARs. I don't know the totality of that number.
Okay, can you provide us with that number?
I'll get back to you.
Okay.
He'll get back.
And
Yeah,
have
he'll
you
always get back.
initiated any new investigation of those bank transactions since, say, September 8th when the new reporting came out?
Andrew, if
check
you're
with
talking
the
about
Treasury
liking the
Department
live
because they're the
stream and
lead on that.
subscribing, you'll find
Okay,
it
so, Director
all right
Patel,
up here.
How many
You'll find it all right up
individuals
there.
or entities has the FBI interviewed, subpoenaed, or compelled to testify? Can you give us those numbers with respect to these bank transactions?
Not off the top of my head. I'll have to work with Treasury.
Okay. We're concerned, you see, because you say you're going after child predators, but
We are.
obviously this is how you follow the money, is if you follow the bank transactions that apparently enabled the child sex trafficking. Would you agree?
It's one of the valuable investigative tools is to follow the money.
Okay.
Follow the
Jeffrey
money.
Epstein's victims have asked us to ask you whether or not you've investigated Epstein's lawyers, the lawyers who facilitated those payments. Have you subpoenaed or questioned any of those lawyers?
So in 2018 and 19, what I recollect is many, if not every one of those lawyers was part of the investigation.
But you weren't there at that time,
I wasn't
right?
there.
Okay. So can you get us the names and the numbers of who was investigated then with respect to those lawyers?
As long as I'm allowed to release it, absolutely.
Okay. Well, if we provide you with subpoenas, I assume you can release it. Is that right?
We have a current subpoena, and we're working with Congress to provide it.
Okay. You've said that the Acosta investigation had an original sin. What do you mean by that?
Basically, if you're looking at an actual pedophile ring,
Thank you to everybody who's joined the live stream today. This morning, I should say.
in which you're legally able to collect
We
information.
appreciate each and every one of you
search
tuning in
warrants
today.
that Mr. Acosta
Don't forget to like
utilized
the
in
video and
2006
subscribe
and
for
7
more so
leading
I
to
can
the
continue bringing you
2008
guys
plea agreement
live breaking news
had a
through the
very
vertical live
specific,
stream.
narrow window of years, I think 3 or 4 years. And so information pursuant to legal process wasn't collected for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. It also, subpoenas were not sent out to hundreds of witnesses at the time, hundreds of victims at the time. None of that was done. None of these people were put in grand juries. And so the totality of information from the jump, instead of being this big, was like this. And that, in my opinion, is not how you run an investigation if you're trying to break a sex trafficking ring.
So you're now in charge of the FBI. Why haven't you done that investigation?
Great question, and here's the answer. Simply because I am not able to go back 20 years and collect information that the courts had decided was already subject to search warrants. They have said this was in the investigation. There's a
What do you guys think about
non-prosecution
that?
agreement out of that plea. And when the case was reopened, and this is where it comes into play, when the case was reopened in 2018 and 2019, the search warrants, again, were limited to the conduct of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's a different discussion, but I'm telling you that's the information
well,
we
I think
reviewed.
that is a different discussion, and I think the discussion we'd like to have today is
Later,
why
Tater.
you aren't following the money with respect to
Stephen, welcome
the
in.
broader conspiracy that it has been reported in the New York Times and elsewhere, and that if you really want to attack the issue, if you wanted to attack the issue, if you wanted to get to the bottom of it, if you wanted to disclose what really was involved in the Epstein files, the Epstein cover-up, that you would be taking very different actions that you are today. I do want to seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the New York Times September 8th, 2025 article, How J.P. Morgan Enabled the Crimes of Jeffrey Epstein,
Objection.
and also an article dated July 17th, 2025 in the Epstein case, Follow the Money.
Objection.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
From
the
Maryland's
chat's been
recognized.
chat's been going. Chat's been going today, guys.
Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of
Stephen, if
Rule
you're just
11,
new
move
here,
that
I bring you
committee
guys live breaking
subpoena
news
the
to the vertical
CEOs
live
of four
stream
banks,
every
JP
day.
Morgan, that's Jamie Dimon, Bank
Don't
of New
forget
York
to
Mellon,
subscribe to the
Robin
channel,
Vitz,
like the video,
Bank of America, Brian Moynihan,
and we'll continue
Deutsche
bringing you
Bank,
guys live
Christian
breaking
Sewing,
news to the vertical
in
live
order
stream.
to get the suspicious
I've seen more enthusiasm and support for law enforcement today because of what you and Donald Trump have done over the last 8 months to protect the American people. The American people couldn't count on their government to protect them. Crime is rampant. And now we have a president and an administration that puts the American people and their safety first. It's interesting, a few minutes ago, a classmate reached out to me and sent me I told him, I said, yes, we got Director Patel in front of our committee today. And Andy Kane wanted me to tell you, he said, quote, tell him we love him. Tell him we love him and all the brave warriors exposing the deep state. Cash, you're a great American, sir. You're a great American. Your work as the director of the FBI is commendable. It's commendable. And I want to thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Keep up the good fight, brother. Don't let him tear you down. Keep up that good fight. You have it in you. With that, sir, I yield back.
All right, you guys, thank you for tuning in to the vertical live stream today, bringing you guys breaking news right here on the Random Thoughts Indoors studio. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll be back once again with live breaking news tomorrow morning. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe.